Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Izuku could transform into any kaiju and bred new species? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Title Terms. Izuku didn't waste time looking at the wave. He used it. He vaulted a rail, shoes skidding on rooftop gravel, and the city split open with sirens. A fairy horn wailed somewhere below, a child's cry pinballed between towers. He breathed once, short, clean, hands flexing like he was catching a medicine ball the size of a district. Then he stepped off the roof. Skin crackled. The air threaded itself through him. Scales that weren't exactly scales braided down his shoulders and arms as if lightning had learned calligraphy. By the time his heels should have met the asphalt, there weren't heels anymore. There were thunderfins carving vapor. The raging skyren caught a crosswind and turned it into a runway. He swung under a cable car line and ripped sky. The wave was wrong, not a crest so much as a wall. Shouldering cranes out of their moorings like toys. Yokohama's bay tore upward, reflective and mean. Izuku didn't blink. He drew the storm in. Thunder gathered where a heart ought to be. Midoriya. Nejire's voice snapped over the open channel, breathless, cutting through the panic logjam. You're aiming to fight the ocean with an attitude. Not attitude, he said, and spun hard through a wind shear, an angle. He slammed into the storm layer above the bay like a swimmer breaking the surface in reverse, wings digging for purchase in clear air. His body wanted to lunge and blast. He set the urge on a leash. Every time he'd won big by getting loud, someone under the noise paid for it. Not today. He rolled, arced, and let the pressure stack until the clouds crumpled around his path. A spiral widened behind him. A cyclone is a clumsy word for an elegant thing. Izuku drew a threaded vortex with the care you use to tie a bandage, hands precise, his body the needle. The spiral bit the wave's crown and twisted. Not to smash it flat. Any idiot could smash, but to pull it sideways, to borrow momentum and hand it back neatly. Water clawed at glass and concrete and came away with nothing to grip. The crest dragged itself into the funnel and stumbled. He saw the ferry then. Too far inside, engine laboring, guys on the deck hauling line like they could lasso physics. People packed the rails. He skimmed along the cyclone's lip and cut it, stitched a second spiral at a different pitch so the winds wouldn't eat each other. A net made of thunderlines unfurled from his finge. RTIPS and sat over the ferry like a parachute. You're insane, Nejire said, somewhere between a laugh and tears. Complaints file is closed, Izuku said, and leaned into the net. The ferry slowed, as if it had just decided to float like a decent boat. Izuku peeled his net down, guided metal and lives toward calm water, and released. A wavelet smacked his cheek. He took the slap. He deserved worse. The big wave was still a problem. He banked and dove for the wall again, snapped his wings, and let the storm chew. The cyclone turned the waves forward, run into a long slide. He didn't want a break. He wanted time. Seconds for people to make different choices. Trucks cleared an underpass. Two teenagers on skateboards grabbed a dog and sprinted upslope. Life is a collection of tiny wins while something enormous tries to erase you. He dropped out of the sky at the harbor mouth, skated on his own thunder until his feet touched concrete. The transformation unwound like a zipper pulled with care. Scales became skin. Storm fins folded into shoulder blades. His breath fogged and then didn't. North seawall's going, Bakugo said on the private line, voice like the edge of a broken bottle, close and too loud and familiar. I've got a lance in the air, but if your idiot twirling can't keep that wall upright. Push them 3 degrees west, Izuku said, already running, every muscle pumping data into the next stride. Tell your pilots to give me 60 seconds. 60 is what you get, Bakugo snapped. No speeches. Wouldn't dream of it. He hit the seawall and grew. No roar. No chest thumping. Just a shift like the city was a sweatshirt he pulled on. The verdant Goliath filled him. Soil scents unrolled under his feet, and what looked like concrete felt, to him, like badly bandaged bone. He set both hands on the wall. Roots, thick as forearms, then as girders, punched down, curling into rebar, then past it, threading the dead fill, finding stubborn clay. He stamped once. The wall remembered how to stand. The wave, less terrible now, more anger than apocalypse, hit his chest and broke. He rode it a step back and laughed under his breath because ridiculous courage deserves a little joy. He shifted his weight to the right and stamped again. Root plates grew between the shattered pylons like someone had decided bridges could sprout. 30 seconds, Bakugo barked. 20, Izuku said, because any number makes a friend breathe easier when it's lower than his. He pivoted and dropped to one knee. With both hands cupped, he unpacked a flock of sleeping ideas. Seed pearls. He didn't invent that word. Some little kid in Kobe had, and he'd promised himself to honor it. 7 pearls hit the slick stone with a ticking sound like rain on tin. They opened. Harbor wardens crawled out, ridiculous and perfect. Kelpback armor glistening, soft mouths tasting air, eyes curious and unafraid. Each the size of a hatchback, each born with a job they could refuse. He tapped his chest. Hey, I'm Izuku, he said like they could care about names. There's current to break, debris to catch, and fissures to not scare too much. You want that? They glittered their eyes at him and then one head butted his shin. Consent. In Warden. He grinned. Team, he said, pointing them into the mouth of the bay. Line there. Curve there. Watch the net. The wardens thumped into the surge and spread. Backs rising like moss-covered boulders, arranging themselves in a gentle crescent that would take the punch, ease the strain, and offer the wave somewhere to go that wasn't into people's kitchens. He could have put them in a perfect line. He didn't. Perfect lines snap, curves hold. By the time the last of the wave shouldered past, it hated everything and wanted to sulk. Good. He let it. Sirens kept talking even when the water settled. That's how cities breathe after a trauma. Loudly, so everyone knows there's still breath left. Drones whirred in like flies, lights flashing, anch. Oars of silver text hanging in the air, Aegis Accord, temporary custody. A woman in a slate suit stepped out of an armored sedan that looked like a lawyer and acted like a tank. Chairwoman Rika Saito, Najire murmured on the public channel. Low and wary, Midoriya Izuku, Saito called, civil and edged, heels precise on wet concrete. Cameras loved her. She loved not being loved back. Thank you for your timely intervention. On behalf of the Accord, I'm ordering immediate impound of all emergent bioforms for safety assessment. Emergent bioforms, Izuku repeated, rolling the words like a marble he didn't want to swallow. He looked past Saito at the wardens, at the ferry easing into the harbor with people clapping like clapping could anchor them. He frowned, thoughtful and, not performative, honest. They're people. They are assets in a disaster zone, Saito said. If they remain, liability multiplies. You may keep temporary custody only under a registered centralized failsafe. You want a kill code. May said softly from somewhere he couldn't see, feed crackling as she moved. Of course she does. Saito didn't flinch. I want a city that wakes up tomorrow. Izuku walked toward her, neither hurry nor swagger. Just a man closing distance because yelling from 10 meters away is rude. The cameras tracked. You could feel the world leaning closer, phones in hands, breath held. He stopped at an arm's length out of professionalism and an inch beyond out of principle. You can watch them with me, he said. You can help write the rules. But nobody gets to own a life they didn't live. We'll draft a sanctuary charter with city councils today. They stay. A single glove clicked behind Saito, a crisp sound in wet air. Izuku didn't need to turn to know the shape of the clap, impatient, derisive. A little itchy to fight. Bakugo dropped from his lance, boots hissing, his mech core fanning behind him in a prickle of blue-white actuators. He didn't bother with his helmet. He wanted his face in the story. Sanctuary charter, Bakugo said, teeth in the words. Sure, but first we make sure your pets don't bite. They won't, Izuku said. Prove it. The mech lances hissed, shoulder cannons rising. The harbor wardens bobbed, unafraid, and that, more than anything, made Izuku hate pointing guns in their direction. He made himself breathe. There are fights you win by not throwing the first punch. There are others you win by offering your chin and trusting your friend not to break it. Circle up, Bakugo snapped. Lances stepped, plating locked. A ring of careful Alice tightened around Izuku and his newborns. He lifted a hand toward the wardens without looking back. Hold, Please, he said. No sudden moves. They held. Good kids. Not kids. People. Old and new as rivers. Saito folded her arms like city roads. Mr. Bakugo, the Accord appreciates the demonstration. Please bring the situation under. Sit on it, Chairwoman, Bakugo said, not even glancing her way. This is a pilot matter. Saito's jaw ticked. Cameras ate it. Izuku took a step forward into the ring and turned his back on the wardens. If this went wrong, he wanted the first holes in him, not them. The lances tracked, polite and lethal. He raised both hands level with his shoulders. No crackle, no showy aura. Come on, nerd, Bakugo said, grin like a scraped knee. Dance. Last time we danced, Izuku said. You broke 2 ribs trying to outswagger a crane. That crane had it coming. Izuku smiled, small and warm, then moved. No telegraph, no shout, just a shift. He didn't go full Raijin. The air around him hummed as if the storm wanted to borrow him for a second. He extended 2 fingers. Thunder kissed metal. Not a bolt, not a theater trick, a draw. He took the lances, charged and turned it lazily, looping it through the wet concrete and up into the sky where it dissipated with a hiss like a polite kettle. The cannons tried to retarget and found themselves relabeled as kettles too. Steam puffed from vents. Panels reset. No damage. Nobody hurt. System logs full of little question marks. Bakugo's mouth tilted. He lifted his gauntlet anyway, because that's what he's for. Izuku stepped into the line of fire, close enough that Bakugo's breath brushed his cheekbone. Close enough that the next move would be either a headbutt or a laugh. Why are you doing this? Izuku asked, quiet enough that the mics might miss it, and maybe he hoped they would. Bakugo didn't blink, because if you ever slip, I need muscle memory to beat you fast before you sink a city. Everything I make can say no. Izuku said, I need you to say no to me too. They looked at each other until laughter leaked out of both against their will. Bakugo glanced past him at the wardens and flapped his hand. The lances relaxed. Run your charter. I'm not signing a kill code either. I am writing a response protocol that punches your face off if you deserve it. Fair, Izuku said. Put me at the top of the liability tree. Saito stepped in, voice cool. You have no authority to bargain public assets. They're not assets, Izuku said, still watching Bakugo because it kept his temper from picking Saito like a scab. They're neighbors, and they'll be invited to the hearing. Do you want a city that wakes up tomorrow and isn't afraid of itself? Help me make that. Something flickered across Saito's face, anger. Calculation. Maybe respect that she'd deny in print. She exhaled. Draft your charter. Accord Council will review. In the meantime, they remain under observational hold. Observational is fine, May said. Popping into sight like a magician from behind a maintenance truck, goggles crooked, hair a crime scene. She tossed Izuku a puck. I built a telemetry rig that can't be hijacked by anyone who isn't me. Don't say thank you. I already know. Thank you. Izuku said. May said, but her grin belonged on a sunrise. They moved, all of them, into the mess tea. Hat comes after heroics. Triage tents unfurled, hoses coughed, a grandmother scolded a firefighter and then hugged him until he laughed. 3 harbor wardens figured out that if they pressed close to a pier, kids could pat their armored backs. The wardens tolerated the attention with grave ceremony like knights knighting small sticky monarchs. A drone drifted lower than the rest, lens wider, silent. It didn't belong to any local station. Its shell was too clean, its movement too deliberate, pattern recognition written into the tilt of its head as if a bird had learned to read and found the words boring. It hovered near the edge of Izuku's cyclone field, tasting. Far above, in orbit somewhere cameras don't show in weather reports, a second eye narrowed. The Seraphim engine did not possess curiosity in the mammal sense. It possessed hypotheses and hunger. It marked angles, correlated frame interval variances in Izuku's movements, tagged the non-bolt thunder event with a label that read, for a few frames, unknown God Age. Then it removed the vowels as if embarrassed by poetry and sent the string to a hangar where pilots pretended they still made decisions. Izuku didn't look up. He knelt by a young warden and pressed his palm to its kelpback. You liked holding the wave, he said. The warden blinked both sets of lids and nudged his wrist gently. It was a yes and a don't overthink it. Najire landed on a lamppost. Hair dripping, shoes squeaking, eyes huge and alive. You are a ridiculous person, she said, and it came out odd, not flogging. Good ridiculous. Team ridiculous, Izuku said. You made the fairy pilots believe in me. They already did, she said, then cut herself off with a grin that reached. Okay. Not a speech. He stood and felt the shake in his thighs he'd been ignoring. He let it be there. Strength isn't pretending you don't shake. Strength is shaking the right way. He looked at Saito and then at the crowd and then at the wardens and then back at the crowd. Cameras as far as the eye wanted to go. He hadn't intended to talk today. Intentions get to be wrong. We're drafting the sanctuary charter with the city council, he said, loud enough to carry, not so loud it would punch. It will say 3 simple things. 1. New species get personhood and consent. 2. Humans get a say in where they live and how safe they are. 3. No one gets a kill switch. We handle danger by showing up and doing work, not by hiding a button. A dozen voices shouted at once. Agreement, fear, questions. He lifted a hand. If a warden chooses to leave, it can. If it chooses to stay, we make room. We'll publish the telemetry. We'll build oversight with people you elect. Saito's team will be there. Bakugo's will be there. If we get this wrong, you get to tell me to stop. Why should we trust you? A man in a soaked suit yelled, not cruel, just tired. Don't, Izuku said. Trust what you can see. Trust what you make with us. If I fail that, don't trust me. Silence came like a courteous guest. Not heavy, just present. A kid held up a hand like class. Izuku pointed. The kid squared his shoulders as if the question had trained for this moment. Can I name that one? He asked, pointing at a warden who was nudging a stuck traffic cone toward a drain like a municipal worker with tenure. You can ask, Izuku said, and faced the warden. Are you okay with a name? The warden made a watery chirp that felt like a shrug. The kid leaned closer. Rainbarrel, he whispered, then louder, proud, Rainbarrel. The warden bonked the cone once like a gavel and moved on. The crowd laughed. Not mean, not mocking, but the kind that sands the edge off a scare. The kind that tells your bones you survived. Saito cleared her throat. Public policy is not a naming contest, she said, and the line didn't land the way she wanted. She pressed on. Mr. Midoriya, my office will expect draft language by dusk. Language by dusk, Izuku echoed. Najire, can you see if the civic center has space? She saluted. And snacks. Critical, Izuku said. Bakugo shoulder checked him like old times, less violent, still rude. Don't write this thing pretty, he muttered. Write it punchable. If you design a thing that can only be used when everyone's polite, it'll break the first time someone isn't. Do I ever design pretty? Izuku asked. Yes, Bakugo said, and smirked. It's disgusting. Mei popped the telemetry puck open with her teeth and slapped it on Izuku's forearm. Temporary connective wetware, she said, handing out smaller tags to volunteers like party favors. Real-time readouts. If any warden deviates into dangerous patterns, we'll see. If someone else tries to spoof the feed, I bite them. Metaphorically, Saito said dryly. Mei considered. I'll get back to you. Things shifted into the kind of motion that means a crisis is cooling. Crews rolling hoses, strangers carrying bottled water, someone handing Izuku a towel as if towels were currency. He accepted it and used it and then handed it to a very offended cat who had somehow remained dry. The cat declined with claws. Izuku walked to the edge of the repa. I read wall and watched the wardens find work. One nudged a half-sunk billboard out to see where a tug could drag it safe. Another settled near the ferry lane, making eddies that kept the channel clear. Rainbarrel earned his name by steering clots of garbage into a single drift that a boat of teenagers with nets cheered to harvest. The city looked like it had practiced being broken and found a new warm-up. A shadow crossed the sun. Thin as a nail, he glanced up. In his head, shapes sorted into columns. Cloud, gull, drone. The drone wasn't local. It wore no reporter's watermark, moved like it had more hands than it showed. Then zipped away as if chastised. Mei, he said, softly, I saw it, she said, softer. Signature weird. Not military. Not commercial. Maybe. Somewhere in between. Between is where knives live. Bakugo said. Between is my favorite place to leave receipts. Between is also where compromise happens, Izuku said, because he couldn't help it. Gross, Bakugo said. They stood like that for a few breaths, watching the water learn to be a bay again. Saito's phone chirped. She stepped away to make law out of weather. Nejire chatted up an elderly dockworker like they were old friends. Mei circled a warden, murmuring thanks and tech talk it would never need to understand, because gratitude doesn't need translation. Izuku looked at his hands. They were human right now, calluses. Faint scars from old bad days, a thin white line where a cat once insisted on boundaries. Those hands had thunder in them. Those hands had roots. He had to choose every time what to be. That was the point. Power that doesn't choose is just weight falling. He'd told himself that at 14 with knobby knees and eyes that believed too hard. He told himself again now because being hard is good but not the same as being right. A boy skidded up beside him, shoes squeaking, hair a storm of its own. Hey, the boy said, bouncing on his toes like the pavement was a trampoline. Can I help them? Actually help. I can swim but my mom says no and I'm not allowed to ride in the boat and. You can help this way, Izuku said, handing him a pair of gloves from a crate. Trash pickup along the sea line. With a buddy. Ask that volunteer. Yes, the one with the orange vest, to pair you up. And you check in with your mom every 10 minutes. The kid nodded vigorously. What if she says no? Then you help by staying near her and telling her all the cool things you saw. Scouting is helping. The boy groaned like he'd been assigned to eat broccoli, then sprinted off Enif. Because some orders are fun to complain about. Izuku exhaled. The breath didn't fix anything. It didn't have to. Breaths aren't hammers. They're practice. Hey, Nejire said softly, all flight and no noise as she landed beside him. You did good. We did okay, he said. That's allowed, she said. Okay is an excellent place to stand while building better. He smiled without intending to. You always sound like a poster. I'm extremely printable, she said, batting her eyelashes on purpose, and then sobered, head tipping toward the wardens. You're sure about the charter? No, he said, honest. That's why it needs everyone. She bumped his hip with hers. Everyone is messy. So am I, he said. We'll match. From somewhere distant, a hum rose under the city, the kind of tea. One that lives in metal and makes you think of old trains and newer war. Izuku thought of satellites with unsympathetic eyes. He thought of an algorithm chewing his footage, learning the rhythm of his steps. He thought of something bigger than oceans slow turning under the world, waking. He blinked and didn't make a speech. He looked at the wardens, at Rainbarrel specifically, who had recruited T. Woe more wardens to his cone retrieval operation and now ran it with the serious face of a small god of municipal services. Izuku's chest hurt in the good way. Okay, he said, to himself, to the city. To whoever held the strange drone's tether. We set terms. He turned back to Saito. Civic Center at 4, he said. Open drafting. You get your lawyers. I get mine. And who are your lawyers? Saito asked, eyebrow the shape of a scalpel. Everyone who has to live with the result, he said. Bakugo groaned. This is going to be loud. Good, Izuku said. That's how you hear where it hurts. Mei tossed him a second puck. And because you always forget to eat, she said, handing him a protein bar with a scowl that was 90% fond. Don't faint in front of the cameras. We're trying to sell competence. He tore it, chewed, swallowed, grimaced. Tastes like a pencil married cardboard. Power of love, Mei said. He let himself laugh again. The weight didn't go anywhere, but it sat better. Responsibility behaves if you feed it humor. Far up, beyond weather and welcome, the Seraphim engine minted a new model from today's data. On another vector map, something older than maps turned in its sleep. Izuku squared his shoulders. Rainbarrel, he called, because names matter, save me a cone. I have a meeting. The warden gavel bonked the water again like he was running the council and Izuku was late. Fair. He walked toward the civic center with a crowd that had decided, for the next few hours at least, not to be enemies. Nejire fell in on his left. Bakugo on his right, muttering curses at bylaws. Mei somewhere behind, counting drones and running her mouth at anyone who tried to fly too close. Saito matched his pace, not liking it and doing it anyway because that's what leaders do when they don't get to like things. A kid's hand caught his elbow, sticky with rain and candy. "Hey, kaiju guy," the kid asked. "Izuku," he said. "Izuku," the kid repeated carefully. "Thanks. Help your mom," Izuku said. "I am," the kid said, and shot off like a bottle rocket aimed at adulthood. The harbor breathed. The city didn't break. He could work with that. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. The hearing that almost burned down. The hearing was already loud before Izuku sat down. Reporters leaning on questions like they had deadlines for air. Parents in the back rows clutching each other. Lawyers with laptops open like shields. He took the mic, didn't test it, didn't smile for cameras. Mei slid into the row behind him, goggles pushed up, a wrench peeking out of her sleeve like an accessory. Bakugo stood near the aisle with his mech lance squad posted like bouncers who hated their job but loved the fight. Chairwoman Saito tapped her stack of documents once. Room hushed because rooms learn fear the way people do. "Mr. Midoriya," she said evenly, "thank you for your assistance yesterday. Today we're here to define the standing of your emergent entities. The Aegis Accord proposes a narrow classification, temporary disaster response assets under centralized oversight and emergency fail-safes." "Fail-safes means kill codes," Mei muttered. "Drink every time they say oversight." Izuku didn't look back. "We're drafting a sanctuary charter with the council," he said into the mic. "Consent, personhood, transparent telemetry, no kill switches, shared response protocols. You can be in the room. You should be." A lawyer from the Accord, sharp hair, sharper shoes, leaned in. "And if a creature you created decides to consent to knocking down a stadium, you'd show up," Izuku said. "So would I. Like yesterday. You don't prevent fire by outlawing oxygen." The lawyer's lips twitched. "You prevent fire with sprinklers. Fail safes." Saito raised a palm. "Emotion aside, we have precedent. Quirks are regulated. Weapons are registered. We require a lever if something goes wrong." Bakugo crossed his arms. "If your first lever is a trigger, you built the wrong machine." A councilwoman 2 seats down cleared her throat. "Mr. Midoriya, you seated these harbor wardens. Did you obtain consent prior to creation?" "Not from them, obviously," Izuku said. He kept his shoulders loose. "From the communities who'd live with them. From the people whose kitchens were about to fill with seawater. Then I asked the wardens to work with us, and I left room for a no." "And if they had refused?" Saito asked. "I'd have tried something else and let them swim away." "That's governance by vibes," the lawyer said. "It's governance by consent," Izuku said, no spike in tone, not apologizing. A clerk leaned in to whisper in Saito's ear. Her eyes flickered toward the ceiling like she could read the report up there. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," she announced, coolly. "Mr. Midoriya, please remain available." He stood, mic buzzing as it left his hand. The building hummed with the heat of too many bodies and too much attention. He took 2 steps toward Mei. "Don't look now," she whispered, "but one of those drones from yesterday is back." "Weird gate." "Drones don't have gates," Bakugo said. "This one wants to," Mei said. Izuku didn't get a chance to answer. A siren cut the air into slices. Not city sirens. Something higher, uglier. An aide sprinted across the carpet with panic folded under professionalism. "Hijack alert," she said to Saito. "Too loud to be private anymore. A tourist airship. Flight path over Minato. Pilot incapacitated. Engines dead. Descending ragged. Possible bomb." Saito didn't finish telling anyone to stay calm. The room exploded into motion. Phones up, chairs screeching. Izuku was already moving. No speech, just a nod to Bakugo. "You," Bakugo said, jabbing a finger, "come back alive or I'm writing your damn charter myself." "Worst threat yet," Izuku said. He ran. Mei dumped a telemetry puck into his palm on reflex. Najire streaked past the window like joy with a job. In the hallway, Izuku didn't bother with doors. He hit the nearest window latch, shoved it up, and climbed onto the narrow ledge, wind grabbing his jacket. People yelled. The ground was a long way down. He stepped off without checking how far. The fall was short because it wasn't a fall. Thunder met bones. Raging Skyrend caught air like air owed him favors. He burned for altitude and ate distance with long, clean cuts, ska. Nning ahead until he saw it. A blimp listing like a drunk planet, drifting across the river toward rooftops that did not sign up to be phone. Najire, he said, voice flat in the wind, tell me you're on my 10. 5, she said cheerfully, sliding into formation like a gull with manners. Somebody really hates their landing gear. May, he asked. Telemetry. Feeding you whatever the city will confess, she said. Airship partial. Avionics dead. Backup batteries are sulking. Getting chatter. Somebody on board is trying to broadcast on a toy radio. He heard it. A thin voice under static. Help. There's. Somebody tied up in the cockpit and some guy. Mask. Says we have to keep going or. Cold sun. Bakugo grunted over the line from the hearing room. Heard their trash last week. End of days fanboys. Izuku kept his eyes on the ship. We separate the people from the performance. Copy. Najire said, serious now. The airship lurched lower. People inside pressed faces to the windows. Izuku didn't look at them. He looked at the structural lines, the wind vectors, the street grid below. He banked under the ship, bled speed, then shot past the nose and rolled into a hover that cost him. He felt the ache but put it behind the to-do list. Okay, he said to the ship like it could hear. We're going to make some friends. He climbed up into full sun and let Heliospike Colossus take him. The shift was warm, sharp. Spines arrayed along his back like antennae learning a new language. Light poured into him. No flare theatrics. He angled it, held it, fed it into a tight, humming handspan. He reached for the airship's dead panels with careful fingers full of mourning. This'll tickle, he said into the general channel, because jokes open locked doors in human brains. He too, shed the avionics casing with one flare and bled power in like a transfusion. The ship shuddered, then leveled. Yes, May hissed in his ear. Yes, keep feeding. But the pitch is still stupid. Najire dove along the starboard side. Spirals a meter off the canvas. Passengers are panicking, she said. Gonna talk them down. She lifted her voice and used that magic tone she had that made bad days drop their knives. Hey, flying friends. Big inhales. Hold hands if you have them. We're going to guide you home and then argue about bylaws, okay? A laugh rippled through the open cabin mics. Laughter keeps people from breaking open. Izuku smiled without meaning to and kept the power drip steady. He needed a busy sky on their side. Sky Sentinels. He asked quietly, a question wrapped in hope. Already folded, May said. But, this is your pitch. He peeled out of Heliospike and slid into warm air again. No storm now, just lift and intent. He cupped his hands. Seed pearls like opals fay. LL into his palms from pockets that weren't pockets. He palmed them once and scattered them into the blue. They opened midair and Sky Sentinels unfurled. Tall as buses, bodies like luminous moth wall. With wings that weren't wings so much as long, slow, translucent flags. They blinked, oriented, and caught the thermals as if they'd been born in stairwells. Hey, Izuku said to them softly. They got a scared ship in too few minutes. Want to shepherd. They angled toward him and then toward the blimp, pulsing with a bioluminescent rhythm that felt like consent. They circled the airship and fanned their long arms, creating shallow, reliable updrafts. The ship stopped falling like a stone pretending to be a cloud and started behaving like something that remembered lift. Cold Sun Maniac is still in the cockpit, Bakugo said. Hearing anonymous threats, good voice acting, maybe a real detonator. You can't punch a bomb with kindness. I can open the door with it, Izuku said. He slid along the gondola. Fingers finding metal edges, the transformation flexing enough for a moment of shard-scale worm. Mirror hide to catch any stupid lasers, then back to human hands because he needed fingers, not claws. He tapped the window. A masked man inside whirled and pointed a device like a science fair with malice. Don't, Izuku said. I'm replacing your grand gesture with a landing and a lawsuit. Gods don't get laws. The man yelled through the glass, voice set to sermon. We'll show your pet city what. Look at the sentinels. Izuku said calmly, as if they had time for a museum tour. They move where they choose. If they wanted to, they could carry this ship into the sun and I wouldn't be able to stop them. They don't want to. They chose us. You chose a mask instead of a job. That's on you. The man twitched like he needed a different script. He jabbed the device at the window. It clicked. Nothing did anything. Mei's laugh came through Izuku's earbud like a sparkler. Remote jammer, she said smugly. Sometimes we get to hit buttons first. Izuku nodded to the pilot tied to his seat. You good if I cut you loose? The pilot nodded so hard it looked painful. Izuku, you cranked the window with shard-scale reinforcement, snapped the latch without tearing the frame, and rolled inside. The masked man lunged. Izuku used the man's arm as a lever and the wall as a suggestion. The device clattered. Nejire slid into the cabin like a coin dropping into the right slot and cuffed the guy with a strip tie she pulled from behind her ear. Please keep your hands inside the failure at all times, she said lightly. Then sincere to the pilot. We've got your power, you've got your hands. Landing is a team sport. Copy, the pilot croaked, rubbing his wrists. Instruments are, wow, okay. Sky Sentinels will hold your updraft, Izuku said. Follow their lights in a slow spiral over the river. No hero moves. The pilot swallowed, then nodded again. The airship steadied. Sentinels pulsed a calm rhythm like a lullaby for machines. Down below, people on rooftops looked up and forgot how to breathe for a second, then remembered and cheered because survival teaches you that cheering is consent too. On a neighboring hotel roof, a woman in a white flight suit watched with her arms folded. No insignia, no smile, no crowding with the other spectators. Izuku knew a pilot when he saw one. Her stance said muscle memory, not thirst for selfies. Her visor clicked down and he felt, without proof, the eyes on him that didn't belong to a human alone. Friendly, Nejire murmured. Professional, Izuku said. We'll find out which kind later. The airship made a clean, silly landing in a park, bumping a statue that had already been broken by last year's parade, so no harm done. Passengers spilled out, laughing and sobbing, a swirl of relief that looks the same in every language. He stepped back from the gondola to give them space. Ochako was there. He didn't know where she came from. She found him like she always had when his heart skated too close to cliffs. She caught his sleeve and tugged him under the canopy of a tree that had somehow survived both modernity and weather. You're good at saving, she said. Not mad, exactly. Not impressed, either. Something sharper. You always were. Practicing the other stuff, he said. Practice while people watch, she said. That charter. Live it. Don't just draft it. Make it so even the people who hate you can trust the rules to be bigger than you. Otherwise you're just a nicer mask. He nodded. It lan. Dead in the place inside him that made decisions. Stay for the session. I have students, she said. They're scarier than your council. I'll stream it. He almost hugged her. She flicked his forehead instead, gentle. Hydrate, dummy, she said, and vanished into the crowd the way professionals do. He exhaled and looked across the park at the pilot in white. She had moved, standing now on the edge of the roof, helmet under her arm. Rain-slick hair undercut with strict lines. She gave him a salute that said I see you, not I adore you. He returned it. Across the sky, a satellite blinked. Izuku felt watched by more than eyes. Mei joined him with a tablet that had been several other things in a past life. Good news, she said. No actual bomb. Bad news. The jammer caught something piggybacking on our feed. Someone sampled the Sentinels, wake signatures. Seraphim. Bakugo asked over the channel. He didn't say engine. He didn't like giving proper nouns to things he wanted to throw at the sun. Probably, Mei said, or a cousin. Signal smelled like aerospace money and religious dread. Great, Bakugo said. Two of my favorite flavors. Izuku checked the Sentinels one more time. They circled high, shedding glittering threads of microfibers that snagged trash and guided it toward nets. A kid pointed, mouth open, then remembered how to close it and tugged her father's sleeve until he looked too. The father didn't cheer. He just put his hand on his daughter's head and watched like the world had not only failed to end, but also decided to try something interesting. Back to the hearing, Izuku said. Before Saito writes me into a corner I can't punch my way out of. They returned to the civic center. The room had rearranged itself into a more dangerous shape. Fewer randoms, more suits, more cameras. Saito stood with her counsel like a chess player at midgame. The pilot in white took a seat along the side wall, not with the press, not with the public. Her ID tag read Wolf, Reina, and wore the small emblem of a contractor everybody knew but nobody could pronounce without a lawyer present. Saito didn't waste the rescue. Mr. Midoriya, she said, your intervention was appreciated. It was also an illustration of why centralized oversight is necessary. A hijacking was resolved because you were nearby. What happens when you're not? Then people who aren't me do the work, he said. Bakugo's lances. Your responders. Najire. The pilot who kept his head while a man yelled scripture at him. And the sentinels who chose to help. The lawyer clicked to a slide of the sentinels in slow motion. These are unknown quantities created without mandate. Without standardized testing. Without a kill code. Saito finished. She didn't look pleased to be helping the lawyer. Mr. Midoriya, the Accord is prepared to offer a compromise. Your charter proceeds, we participate, telemetry is fully public, and a failsafe exists, managed by a third-party committee. Third-party committees are where courage goes to nap, Bakugo muttered. Mei raised her hand like a rude student. If you build a global off switch, it will be abused. If you build 10 distributed smaller ones, 9 will be hacked. If you build a failsafe that requires unanimous consent in a crisis, you built a no-safe. Saito's jaw set. Engineer, I appreciate the lecture. It wasn't one, Mei said without flinching. It was math with extra honesty. Izuku took the mic. Here's my counter. No kill switch, but we codify a civil veto and a response protocol that outranks me. If a creation endangers people and won't disengage, a council of responders you pick can declare a stop. That stop triggers 1. A public alarm. 2. Designated non-lethal counters from Bakugo's units. 3. My recusal. Temporarily. From decisions about that species. Everything logged. Everyone in the room. Murmurs rolled like marbles under chairs. The lawyer leaned forward, and if the entity does not stop, then the response escalates, Izuku said, openly. Step by step. Nobody gets to solve fear with a silent button. Saito held his gaze a long time. There was something like respect there. Boxed and labeled and not allowed out to play. Draft it, she said. Specifics. By end of day. Dusk, he said. Dusk, she agreed. A courier in a security vest slid through the crowd and handed Saito a note. She read it, expression not moving, then folded it in half with clinical neatness. For the record, she said, an evidence locker at the Riverside Forensics Annex was breached during the airship incident. A Genesis embryo, confiscated from a cold sun cell last month, has been stolen. The room hissed like a pan hitting water. Mei's eyes snapped to Izuku. They grabbed a seed without the safeties. Trackers, he asked. Not on that one, she said, furious at herself and at physics. It was a pre-me. Saito didn't gloat. She didn't have to. This is exactly the scenario we fear. Izuku didn't pretend it was fine. What do you need? He asked her. Everything, Saito said. Yours. Find it before it hatches. Bakugo was already on his comms, barking. Lances, spin up, Riverside grid. We're not letting a cult teach a baby to be a bomb. Reina Wolf raised a hand from the wall like a student in the world's worst classroom. Saito blinked, then nodded. Captain Wolf. Reina stood. Her voice had no fluff. My team has thermal overflight. We saw a van leave the annex during the airship mess. It took a route like it didn't care about traffic cameras because it didn't. Someone else turned them. We can pull the ghost trail. Who's we? Bakugo asked. Contractors, she said. As in, tools that work. Izuku almost smiled. Tools that record. She didn't blink. Everything records. The difference is whether you admit it. Saito's gaze moved between them like a metronome. Work together, she said. Or you can all explain yourselves to parents on the eve. Ning news who don't care about your rivalries. Nobody argued with that. The hearing dissolved into a mobile command center. Screens rolled out. The public didn't leave. They watched because Transpa. Rensi feels like a kind of courage when you can't do the dangerous part yourself. Maps lit up. Van routes ghosted across the city like a bad idea trying to get good at hiding. May shoved a plug into a console and swore when it bit her. Ow, okay, I've got an extrapolation on power draw. If they're incubating, they'll look for a low, steady supply and a water source. Half the city, Bakugo said. Start having. Cold Sun rented a unit under a fake nonprofit, Najire said, scrolling community board posts like a gossip god. River adjacent, cheap, in a warehouse that used to be a textile mill. Reina pointed with a pen. This grid had a 3-minute dropout during the airship incident. Cameras died, then came back with different clocks. Smart, sloppy. They left a jitter. Izuku didn't enjoy the hunt. He enjoyed doing useful. He pinged the harbor wardens on the river, asked them to nose the pilings near the mill for heat signatures and for anything that tasted like a battery in a swimsuit. Rainbarrel pinged back first, because of course he did, little pulses of yes/no that May rendered on a screen as smiley faces because she refused to be boring even now. Hit, she said, there's a warmth that doesn't belong. Saito didn't put on a coat. She didn't put on a helmet. She just nodded like she had crews who'd die if she acted like she was more important than the work. Move, she said. They moved. The warehouse reeked of old cloth and new desperation. Bakugo's lances took positions without theatrics. Najire floated near the rafters, eyes bright. May crouched by a breaker box with tools in her teeth. Reina checked her sidearm, then kept it holstered, one hand free, the other on a small controller with proprietary arrogance. Saito stood under a busted skylight like a statue that had opinions. Izuku found the hum. Not power. Not city. Something womb-like. He followed it. A door had a fake lock that thought it was clever. May opened it by smiling at it like a villain and humming an ultrasonic note. Inside, a tank the size of a van, improvised tubing, a generator, and a pulsing pearl webbed in wires. He stopped at the threshold. No heroic plunge. He let his heartbeat slow. Then he spoke to the thing not as a father, not as a god, but as a neighbor you don't want to scare. Hey, he said, you're early. You don't have to hurry. A man in a hoodie stepped out from behind the tank with a weapon he didn't know how to use properly. Cold Sun tattoo peeking at his collar. His hands shook. He wasn't the airship guy. He was smaller, more sad than loud. Back off, he said. You don't get to own everything. Nobody gets to own anything alive, Izuku said softly. That includes you. We're making a guardian, the man insisted. One that obeys. One that doesn't ask the city for permission to be strong. You're making a prison, Izuku said. And calling it a friend. He took one step in and let verdant Goliath swell through his arms without taking his full height. Roots find cracks. Honesty does too. He sank his fingers into the floor softly and let the building talk to him. May, recognizing the move, slid her palm along the tank and read back the whisper. Overheating, she breathed. If we kill power, it'll shock the embryo. If we let it run, it overcooks. We need a third option. Always, Izuku said. Reina had drifted closer, controller in her hand idle now. Eyes on the web of wires. I can bridge with a portable and bleed the spike, she said. But your creature isn't mine, Izuku said. Reina's mouth twitched like she wanted to argue with him more than she wanted to argue with the cultist. Fine. The creature will still be in stress. Let me talk to it, Izuku said. The cultist's eyes widened. That's not. Shish, Najire said, landing beside him like a promise. Let him do the thing that scares you. Izuku palmed the tank, not touching the wires. He let the abyssal choir in his chest hum without the rest of the form. Pressure song without pressure. He sang. Not music, not really, just sound tuned to your safe and you can stop. The pearl's pulse slowed. The generator's whine lost its edge. May stared at our readouts and mouthed a swear word that might have been a prayer. Bakugo slid in, slow as a big cat, eyes on the cultist's hands. Hey, choir boy, he said conversationally, put the toy down and you get to be a defendant in a court instead of a memorial on a t-shirt. The man let the weapon droop. They'll kill it, he whispered. The accord. They'll press a button and call it safety. Then me write rules where nobody gets that button, Izuku said, still singing under the words. You don't get it either. The man cried like he didn't know how to make tears and hated that he was learning. He held out the weapon. Wrists trembling. Reina took it, checked the chamber like an insult, and set it aside. May and Reina moved together on the generator, 2 different schools of competence, 1 solution. The power bled off through a portable pack that groaned but didn't give up. The pearl's shimmer eased from frantic to curious. Izuku felt the moment it stopped trying to be the idea song. E1 forced on it and started being itself. He stepped back, hands up. Your choice, he whispered. There's a river. There's a sky. There are people. You can be anything that doesn't eat them. The pearl didn't hatch. It settled. The hum folded into a normal said in a voice he hadn't heard yet because it hadn't decided what it wanted to sound like. He smiled. Small, a yes to a yes. Outside, pole, ice lights painted the warehouse in red and blue. Saito waited at the door, shoulders tight, chin up. Well, she asked. Recovered, Bakugo said. Not cooked, not leashed. Saito looked at the tank. Like it was a law she hadn't drafted yet. Our lab, our sanctum, Izuku said gently. Public oversight, shared custody. You can bring your experts. But if this hatches under a ceiling and the first sky it knows is fluorescent, I will never forgive us. Silence held for 1 tick. 2. Saito blew out a breath that didn't soften her. Sanctum, she said, with cameras. And a lot of lawyers. Bring snacks, Najire said. On the walk back to the civic center, Reina Wolf matched Izuku's pace for 3 seconds, a truce length. You feed your power through jokes, she said. Not a compliment, not a sneer. An observation. I feed myself through them, he said. She nodded once. You should know. Your moves today wrote into a dozen models. Someone upstairs is starving for you. He didn't ask who. He already knew. Let them eat math, he said. I'll keep changing the recipe. Her mouth did the barest almost smile. We'll see. Back in the hearing room, the public hadn't left. Word trav. Else faster when everyone agrees to listen. Izuku took the mic, wiped his palm on his thigh, didn't check if his hair was camera friendly. He spoke. The charter draft is on the wall, he said, motioning to the big screen. Consent, personhood, telemetry, civil veto, recusal, response ladder, shared sanctum custody for emergent life. We'll argue it line by line. We'll do it loud. He met Saito's eyes. She nodded like she hated that she didn't hate this. Begin, she said. They began. People argued, cleanly and messily, like families who refuse to break even when they maybe should. Engineers talked about thresholds. Parents talked about playgrounds. A fisherman stood up and asked if the reef singers would eat his year. Izuku promised to adjust harmonics to favor algae without making that a command, just a nudge. A conversation with voices the ocean understood. The fisherman said, if it works, I'll bake you bread, and sat down, and Izuku penciled in bread by the clause because keeping track of reasons to be human is also policy. Hours slid. No smoke-filled backroom here. The smoke had been replaced by too much coffee and the smell of wet jackets. Bakugo drafted the response lad. R like a man designing a punch that stops just shy of breaking a jaw. May hacked the projector to display edits in colors that looked like candy. Najire ran a soda to Saito and didn't make a joke out of it. At dusk. The real kind. Not the metaphor you use to end a story. Reina's visor pinged with a message only she saw. Up in orbit, the Seraphim engine added a new branch to its model tree labeled W. ITH, an insult that used to be praise in another century. It did not cheer. It adjusted. Izuku initialed the bottom of the draft with a pen a volunteer handed him like a relic. Saito initialed. The council stamped. The room exhaled like a held breath, learning it can choose to be a sigh or a laugh. Outside, the sky sentinels drew a slow loop over the river and then banked toward open air. One peel, ed away and drifted above the civic center. It pulsed once, soft. The lights in the hall flickered in a way that felt like a wink, even if electricity doesn't know what winking is. Ochako texted him a single thumbs up emoji. He laughed. May jabbed his side with the wrench. Bakugo grunted. Acceptable. Najire tugged him toward a table full of donated sandwiches like her life depended on carby diplomacy. Saito packed up her neat stacks. Before she left, she paused at his shoulder. I don't trust you, she said. Good, he said. Trust the rules we made together. I intend to, she said. And to improve them. Please, he said, and meant it. She walked away. Reina did not. She lingered at the back until the room thinned, then spoke without preamble. Your heliospike bleed into the Avi. Onyx. How many seconds until you cook the panel? 10, he said. I gave it 5. Good, she said. You should also know that if you keep feeding these things to the public, the thing upstairs will keep eating you. It believes emotion is latency. He met her eyes. Emotion is aim. She considered that like a math problem that could maybe be fun if you respected it. We'll see, she said again, and ghosted out the door. May hooked her arm through his. Okay, she announced. Eat, then sleep a little, then we go to the sanctum and whisper at a pearl until it chooses to be something that won't make fishermen hate us. Working title, he said. Shut up and chew, Bakugo said, shoving a sandwich into his hand. City's watching. Don't choke. He didn't. He ate. He listened to people argue about punctuation like it mattered because it did. He texted Rainbarrel. Good work. Council wants you to come by tomorrow and ruin some cones. Are you free? The reply came as a location ping F. Rom the pier and a tiny chirrup on the public feed that sounded suspiciously like yes. Up above, cameras blinked. Somewhere deeper, older, colder than orbit, a slow pulse rippled through water that hadn't learned to be a bay yet. Izuku didn't feel it fully. He felt the shape of a future problem and decided not to be afraid of it today. Today had already asked enough. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The City Under Glass. The first sign wasn't the siren. It was the air going wrong. Izuku caught it mid-sentence inside the sanctum, a sweet metal tang like the inside of a broken battery. Volunteers froze. May's head snapped up. Bakugo swore, already moving. Someone's phone lit with an emergency banner that read Dome Protocol, and the lights did that quiet flicker buildings do when they're trying to be calm. Ward 37, Najire said, hand over one ear, voice coming fast. Hospitals pinging. Air tastes like pennies. Izuku didn't ask for a briefing. He ran. The team ran with him. Sate, caught up in heels that did not slow her down. A staffer jogged behind with a tablet and lungs on fire. Outside, the city had grown a bubble. It wasn't glass. It looked like it. It even caught sunlight like a smug snow globe. But the barrier was a lattice of aerosolized polymer, thin, flexing, and very proud of itself. Inside it, a whole ward glittered wrong. You could see people moving. You couldn't hear them. That was the trick. Sound died against the film. If you stood close enough, you could feel your own bones humming with the wrongness of it. Bakugo slapped a gauntlet against the dome. It made a sound like a rubber band apologizing. Who the hell builds a lid? Bioterror, May said, 3 words clipped with hate. Dome to trap, toxin inside to teach a lesson. Saito was already on 2 phones. Pulling building schematics. Getting scrubber tower data. Why is a textile ward outfitted with? Because the last decade taught people to be paranoid, Izuku said, and put his palm on the film. It gave, delicate. Beyond it, a kid pressed her hand to the same spot. She couldn't hear him. He could see her mouth shape the universal question, now what? Now we show up, he whispered, and let power choose him. Verdant Goliath took him the way a good coat takes the cold. Bones remembered weight. Skin found root. He didn't go giant. He didn't need to. He pressed both hands to base of the dome where it latched to the road like a tick. He sent roots around the anchors, not to rip, but to cradle. You yank a device like this and it vents everything at once. You hold it and it thinks about failing a different way. Shardscale, May said, pointing at 3 towers inside the dome. Those aren't antennae. They're scrubbers. Someone hijacked them. UV lasers inside are heating. The aerosol so the toxin sticks to lungs better. Of course they did, Bakugo said. Of course an air cleaner learned murder. Izuku glanced at him. We're stealing them back. He slid Verdant his legs and shoulders and let Shardscale worm roll up his skin like a mirror shirt. The air around the towers shimmered, pale lines hunting. He walked forward and the beams hit him and went somewhere else. Their reflection hitting their own housings, their own filters. Metal ticked. Fans coughed. He took 2 more steps and the tower sighed like a sick room cracking a window. Najire zipped along the inside of the dome's curve, trying to get eyes on exits. Her voice came through the public channel for the people trapped inside, loud and steady. Hey, bubble folks, don't run. Short breaths. Tea cloth over your nose if you've got one. Follow the blue tape lines the responders are laying down. They can't hear you, Bakugo said. They can read, she shot back, already taping big arrows on the inside of the dome with a roll of neon tape she had no business having and always did. Saito pointed to a seam in the dome frame. Release collars here, here, and here, she said, stabbing the tablet. If we crack 3 simultaneously, we can vent high and pull the air through a filter bed. If we crack 1, we flood the street. 3, Bakugo said. My lances can hit 2. You take the 3rd, nerd. Izuku nodded. I'll brace the structure. But we need something eating the bad stuff, now. Mei had already switched tools. She dropped to one knee and clacked open a case of seed pearls the size of knuckles. Her tongue touching her top teeth the way it did when she was concentrating hard. I tuned these for heavy metals and solvent residues, she said without looking up. They'll also eat your boots if you insult them. What are they? Saito asked, skeptical and desperate. Verdant carapacers, Izuku said, taking a handful like a priest palming communion. They don't obey. They collaborate. He pressed the pearls to the seam of the dome and let them choose. The first click was sweet. A thumb-sized scarab unfolded, iridescent back fluttering open to reveal soft mouthparts and a little expression that read him. Crime. 5 more hatched and scuttled along the seam, tapping the dome with careful beaks, tasting the polymer. They chirped. He understood the tone. We can help, but not alone. More, he said. You okay to work in this? They chirped again. We choose. He grinned. Carapacers to seam lines, he said, rolling a dozen across his palm and setting them free. Second wave to soil. Eat the spill. Hoop it into something worth planting. That's not a verb, Saito said. It is today, Mei said, beaming. The domes inside glowered. People moved along the taped lines, holding shirts to faces. A man in a suit elbowed a woman to get to a crack in the film. A teenager slapped his hand and wrote no on the film with a marker. Izuku caught the teenager's gaze and tapped his chest. The kid nodded. Not heroes. Neighbors. A shadow slipped near the far scrubber tower, too smooth, too calm to be a panicked civilian. Izuku stepped to put himself between the shadow and a cluster of kids. The shadow stepped out and built a smile from scratch. He was slender and put together like ideas are. Clean lines, a little sharp at the corners, eyes too bright. White lab coat, black clothes under it. A tie the color of a bruise, gloves only because he liked how they looked. He moved like someone who knows all the exits and never uses them. The name hit Izuku a second before the voice did. Dr. Kensai Obsidian, the man said with a little half-bow he must have practiced in a mirror. Sable, if we're friendly. Mr. Midoriya, apologies for the mess. The dome wasn't mine. The opportunity is. Bakugo's gauntlet lifted. Say one more sentence like a shampoo ad. Hi, explosion, Sable said, quick and amused. Please don't rupture a life support system because I'm annoying. Mei's forehead vein began to write a short story. You, she said flatly. Sable put both hands up, eyes on Izuku. I'm not here to stop the rescue. I'm here to improve it. Your carapacers, adorable, inefficient. Give me access to their enzyme libraries and I'll give you a pattern that localizes detox in minutes, not hours. Also, I can tune the scrubbers to stop pulsing like a club from 2008 and start acting like lungs. Izuku didn't tell him to shut up. He didn't agree either. He watched Sable's eyes when people coughed. There was care there, weird and clinical and real. There was also hunger. Sable didn't just want to save people. Sable wanted to be right about the machine that was life. Terms, Izuku said. Sable brightened. Yes, you touch nothing without me watching. You write no locks. You build no override I can't see. You keep your hands out of their heads. He nodded at the carapacers, who had formed a line like tiny dockworkers and were chewing at the dome's seam with absurd, furious focus. Sable put a hand to his chest like he'd been shot by politeness. You wound me. Good, Bakugo said. Bleed outside. Sable glanced at him. Then back to Izuku. Consent is elegant until it costs lives. I can give these creatures a nudge so they prefer the right poisons. Nudge is not a leash, Izuku said. Nudge is a conversation. You're welcome to speak. You don't get the last word. Sable measured him like a man checking the span of a bridge. Then he shrugged, that precise little flick of his shoulders that meant he'd picked speed over pride. Fine, we'll do it your way and save them. And then later we'll talk about how many people could have been saved if we did it mine. Mei rolled her eyes heavenward and muttered, Men. Men what? Najire asked, Not looking down from where she was guiding a line of elders around a blocked stairwell with hand signals and a grin. Just men, Mei said. Izuku's palm pressed into the road. Verdant Goliath flexed. He felt the anchors of the dome like rotten nails. He sent roots around them like warm hands around a wrist that needs a pulse. Bakugo's lances took their positions at the other two release collars. On my mark, Saito said crisply into the city channel. 3, 2, 1. They cracked the collars. The dome sighed high, air rushing toward the filter bed rigged on scaffolds like a silver curtain. Inside, street banners fluttered. The sudden wind tried to panic people. Najire laughed into it, making a game out of bent hats and spinning flyers. The carapacers surged as one, chittering, carving out vent notches and then dropping to the curb to chew the runoff that should have killed flowers next spring. Sable cursed softly. They're learning from each other. Yes, Izuku said. That's the point. He stepped sideways into a beam and caught it with shardscale. The reflection hit a scrubber's inner throat. It coughed itself back into helpful. 2 more beams tried, and 2 more found thems. Elves doing something better with their day. Mei whooped. Yes, yes, yes. Eat your own dumb light. An elderly woman collapsed 10 meters inside the dome. The teen with the marker slid under her shoulders and got her feet moving. Cussing with love. Bakugo took 2 strides and shouldered through the film like it was Debutina and he'd paid cover. He scooped the woman up with gentleness that didn't mock. It looked like a trick and brought her out to medics who were already moving. Hydration. Bakugo barked. Small sips. Anyone mouth breathing is lying. Saito coordinated ambulances with the same tone she'd used on Izuku in the hearing. Except here it was a gift. Reina's contractors, yeah, those, had materialized at the perimeter, not stepping on locals' toes, just there, the way professionals are. When someone upstairs is paying attention. Reina herself stood on a toppled mailbox and watched the towers, thermal signatures like they owed her money. The dome thinned. Not fast. Right. People mauve. Ed out in lines like ants and like citizens, both are respectable. The air tasted less like pennies and more like dust in a gym. Izuku wanted to sag against a lamppost. He didn't. He had one more move. He climbed the curve of the dome with fingers and stopped near the top. Hey, he said to Mei, gimme a slimline. She tossed a membrane patch. He slapped it over the film. On 3 I give the dome a chimney. We pull everything through the bed and vent above the skyline. Will it fight? Sable asked. Everything alive fights, Izuku said, and punched exactly once. The dome split at the patch. Air roared. The bed devoured. For a long half minute, the ward sucked. People hunched. Kids hollered because you're allowed when the world is vacuuming you with a giant invisible straw. Then the force dropped. The dome gave up pretending to be useful and drooped like a plastic bag that lost its job. Izuku slid down and landed next to Rainbarrel, who had somehow made it uprive. To snuffle at the filters from the safe side like an auditor with a kelp cape. Hey, friend, he said, palm to kelpback. Smelled something weird. Rainbarrel chirruped and shoved his beak under Izuku's hand. Izuku rubbed gently. The ward breathed as if it had forgotten how and was being tutored by an old couch. Sable tucked his gloves into his pocket. You did it, he said. He sounded annoyed at his own admiration. We did it, Izuku said. He meant the carapacers, the lances, the tape, the council ordinance that let Saito turn a whole street one way without a 5-hour screaming match. He meant the teenager who'd used his body as a wedge against a panic and the grandmother who, once she caught her breath, was already scolding a camera. Saito stood at the new opening, hair wrecked, suit still on brand. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. We'll audit, she said. We'll write new thresholds. We'll buy time for next time. And if I find who installed those scrubbers. They didn't install them, Sable said, mild. They woke them up. Saito's eyes could have cut sheet metal. Get out of my face. He stepped back, palms up. Fair. For later. I can give your responders a sensor. That smells this forming before people do. You'll hate my NDA. We can fight about it with sandwiches. May made a face like she'd bitten a lemon that insulted her. I will eat your NDA. I look forward to that, Sable said pleasantly. And wandered off toward a car that looked unmarked on purpose. Izuku opened the sanctum van and set out a big blue tub. The carapacers gathered around it, drawn by the scent of minerals and promise. He put both hands by the lip. Okay, he said, choice time. They clicked back at him, funny, bossy, themselves. We'll stay until the seam is clean. Then we're hungry somewhere else. Where? He asked. A carapacer tapped the map on his wrist with a gentle beak. A park 2 wards over. He nodded. They have old soil that needs help, he said. You'll meet gardeners. They have opinions. They chirped. We like opinions. They taste like salt. Bakugo joined him, sweat cutting tracks in the dust at his temples. You gonna tell them thank you again? Yup. Say it for me too, Bakugo said. Too gruff to pretend he didn't mean it. Izuku did. Palm to carapace. Quiet. Thanks for choosing us. A tech yelled. Everyone flinched. The scrubber tower nearest the river hiccuped and threw sparks. A drone drifted from nowhere and perched on a streetlight. Smooth, quiet, halo of sensors like a crown drawn by someone who doesn't like crowns. It leaned, watched the carapacers working, and spat out a thin filament that snagged a loose shell flake and reeled it in. May's wrench left her hand with the accuracy of a myth. The drone dodged. The wrench clanged off the light. The drone zipped higher, smug. Reina didn't move from her mailbox. She just pressed a button on her controller. The drone wobbled, reset, and tried to leave. Nope, May said. Reina watched the drone fight invisible glue. You'll get your shell back, she said to Izuku. They'll get nothing useful. That's not true, Izuku said. They'll get footage of how we handle fear. Bakugo grunted. Footage is fine. Code is the monster. Then we keep changing the moves, Izuku said. We keep writing rules in public. We keep feeding them math that can't find our heart. Saito's staff. Tapped her arm and pointed to a cluster of parents hugging in a knot you could build a house around. She nodded and went to talk to them like a human, not a chair. Najire sat on the curb with a lit TLE girl whose backpack was a small aquarium with fake fish winking inside. They sipped water and compared notes on rescue snacks. May argued with a foreman about where to put a new vent that wouldn't blow dust into the soup place. Sable appeared at Izuku's shoulder like a punctuation mark. He held something out, a small data shard in a case like a toy coffin. Angles for your shard scale, he said, dry. The scrubber lasers bounce cleaner at 33 degrees than 30. You felt it. Here's the proof. Also, minor enzyme tweak for your carapacers that will make their pooped soil better at binding lead. Try it if you like. Or don't, to make a point. You helping for the joy of being right? Izuku asked. Sable's smile was a round and knot in his eyes. I'm helping because I live here, he said. And because I want a seat at the table where you insist tables are circles. Izuku looked at the shard. Any locks? No, Sable said. I'll save those for when you bore me. You won't, Izuku said. And pocketed the shard with the care you use for something that can't hurt you but might tempt you to be lazy. You want into the sanctum. Fill out the same form everyone else does. Bring references. Bake bread. Sable blinked. Bread. A fisherman promised me some, Izuku said. I'm making it a thing. Sable barked a laugh that sounded like he didn't do that often. Fine. All fi. ND a bakery that hates me and make them love me. Cute trick, Bakugo said. Good luck. Sable tipped 2 fingers in lazy salute and ghosted away. The dome sagged into piles that cleanup crews collected with big rakes. You could breathe normal. You could hear children again. That's how you know you're winning. Sound comes back the right way. Izuku crouched by a carapacer that had stopped to check its own reflection in a puddle. You're vain, he said. It clicked a scolding noise and went back to work. Rainbarrel bumped his hip and rejected a traffic cone for being too boring. Izuku grinned. Eden rummaged in the tub for a brighter one. Rainbarrel accepted it with gravity. Somewhere, An old man called into a station to say, "I think things might be okay," and then hung up because the operator started crying and he didn't know what to do with that. Saito walked back, jacket off, sleeves rolled, tie gone. "We'll need a statement," she said, but softer than yesterday. "And a meeting with the sanitation union. And a prayer for whoever tuned those towers, because I intend to make their life inconvenient." "I'll bring snacks," Najire said. "That was not a request for snacks," Saito said. "A beat. Bring snacks." Bakugo pointed his chin at the sky. "You feel that?" Izuku did. "Not wind. Not pressure change. A tug, like the ocean thinking about a different coastline. Pipes under." The street hummed in a key he didn't know he knew. He breathed and didn't name it out loud because naming is a promise and he wasn't ready to promise that yet. He put his hand on Rainbarrel's back. "We good." Rainbarrel chirped and shoved his head into Izuku's palm. The carapacers formed a little parade as they left, clicking in a rhythm that sounded suspiciously like a song workers sing when the shift ends and the bar opens. People waved. Someone handed one of them a leaf of lettuce like a medal. It ate the medal with dignity. By sundown, the ward smelled like wet plastic and boiled tea. Volunteers rolled up tape. Kids compared dome selfies. A street musician flipped his case open and started noodling because cities do that. They put music next to trauma and dare you to pick a side. Izuku sat on a curb at last and let his muscles complain out loud. Mei plopped beside him and thunked her head on his shoulder. "We need more carapacers," she said. "I want to teach a class on Koopa's policy." "Please rebrand," Saito said, walking past them. Then, "No, keep it. It's accurate." Bakugo stood in the street with his hands on his hips, looking like a statue that swears. Response ladder held, he grunted. "Nobody fired the wrong thing. Nobody grandstanded." "You did," Mei said. "I'm allowed," he said. Reina slid up with 2 bottles of water and a gaze you could hang a level from. She handed one to Izuku. "The microdrone that tried to steal your shell flake," she said. "I traced the control signature. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Saito's. It was upstairs." "Say the word," Bakugo said. "I like punching space." "It's not in space," Reina said. "It's in the contracts you didn't read. It's in the between. It's hungry." Izuku twisted the cap. "Emotion is aim," he said. "I heard you," she said. "I haven't decided if I believe you." "You don't have to," he said. "You can just watch who I point at." She drank, studied the street, nodded once like a test you don't grade yet. "You did good," she said. And then, because she couldn't help herself, "But you missed a refraction angle on Tower B." "I got a correction," he said, patting his pocket. "From a very annoying source." She smirked. "Use it." He would. He'd check it for locks first, then he'd use it. Because being stubborn isn't the same as being strong. Night leaned in. The ward looked like a city again, not a snow globe full of fear. Izuku stood and stretched and felt his back pop like bubble wrap. "Sanctum," he said. "We babysit a pearl." Mei slapped his chest with a post-it that read "Eat" in very aggressive letters. "You get 20 minutes of noodles first or I turn your organs off." "That's not how," he started. "Do you want to find out?" she asked sweetly. "No," he said. "Noodles." Bakugo peeled away to yell at a vendor until the vendor laughed and doubled the portion. Saito took a call from someone who would never understand why she'd bent at the dome. She didn't explain it, she told them to send money for better scrubbers and hung up with legal grace. Reina checked the night sky as if it owed her a hint. Najire hummed, eyes on people holding each other while pretending they were just standing close. They ate beside the van with their feet in the gutter like teenagers. Steam fogged Mei's goggles. A carapacer wandered over and tried to steal a bean sprout. Mei let it and pretended not to see. Izuku chewed. Listen to music. Listen to city. Listen to the deeper hum under both. The one that meant something older had rolled in its sleep. He didn't tense. He made a note. He'd need the abyssal choir soon. He'd need to sing a map nobody had thought to draw yet. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and hopped off the curb. "Okay," he said. "Back to work." Rainby. Arl bonked the bright cone against his shin like a decision bell. "Back to work," Izuku repeated, and the street answered by getting on with being a street. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Abyss Choir Rising. The call came broken. Salt in the speaker, panic in the gaps. Arcology 9. Power loss. Pressure doors jammed. Kids in the swim school, lights out. Izuku didn't answer with words. He jumped. Water ate the city noise. Cold slapped sense into his face. He let the ocean close over him and let go of gravity like shedding a coat. Abyssal choir unspooled through his ribs, lungs rethreaded as pressure organs. Throat turning into a low-note furnace. He pushed down past the green, past the blue, into the heavy dark where sound travels like truth. 2 minutes to trench lip, Najire said, her voice ice tinny and cheerful over the bone calm. I'm behind you with the rescue line and a terrible song stuck in my head. You can't sing worse than me, he said, cracking his jaw to let the pressure shift. Save your air. I brought extra, she said, which wasn't how air worked, but she made optimism sound physics adjacent. Above, Bakugo's voice snapped in. Coast Guard is clearing a ring. Lances are moving cranes. Don't explode the school. Explode nothing, Izuku said, and rolled into the trench. The drowned arcology hunched in the valley like a glittering apartment block sunk 17 stories too far. Portholes glowed weakly. A bubble of trapped breath licked at a cracked roof and slid away into nothing. Something big moved near the foundations. Dull flex, old strength. He tuned it out. Kids first. He sang. Not a song exactly. The choir in his chest fired pressure pulses that mapped hallways and stairwells and panicked hearts. The building unfolded in his head like a wireframe, blocked doors bright red. Open ones green, heat signatures faint and flickering. He felt the swim school. A classroom with cartoon fish peeling off the wall, a row of tiny flippers, a teacher pressing 3 kids into a corner and making jokes their bodies were too young to understand. Found them, he said. North shaft, 3 doors down from the broken seal. He kicked harder. The world pressed back. He pressed again and won. A shadow slid across his path. Long, electric, curious and mean. Bioelectric eels aren't supposed to live this deep. Today wasn't polite. The eel flared its frill and went for his eye. He didn't flare back. He opened his mouth and let the choir drop one soft, wrong frequency pulse. The eel reeled like it had heard a rumor about itself and hated it. It fled. Nejir. He ghosted into his peripheral like a glowstick that learned calculus. You got the door, or am I doing my strong woman bit? Both, he said. He braced his shoulder against the jammed hatch and pushed. The metal moaned. The seal complained, and then the door coughed open enough for a Najire-shaped person to slide through. She vanished into the dark. Beat. 2 beats. Her hand shot out, grabbed a small wrist, then another. Kid eyes wide as moons. He didn't breathe. He set his body in the gap and held the door while she moved kids like precious mail. Hey Chaos Nuggets, Najire whispered to the class, voice butter soft in the dark. Field trip time. Hold the rope. Keep your noses in the masks, pretend you're fish that pay taxes. A tiny laugh bubbled. Izuku swallowed the sting behind his eyes and sang again. Mapping the other rooms. A man on crutches, a neighbor dragging him by the armpits. 2 teenagers wedged under a collapsed light rig, trying to pry it off with a broom handle. The teacher refusing to leave last. Of course. Got you, he murmured, and let the abyss push him exactly where it didn't want him to go. He slipped into a room with 3 feet of stale air at the top and 4 feet of arguments below. Hi, he said, the word more in her bones than her ears. He handed the teacher a spare mask, pointed at the rope. She shook her head. He lifted an eyebrow. She shoved the smallest kid at him like a decision. He took the kid and nodded at her, and the look she gave him said a lot of strong words without ruining the children's education. He kicked them down the rope line, handed the kid to Najire, and turned to the teenagers. Move, he said. They tried harder. The bar didn't care. He shifted his chest and the choir puffed a tiny blast that shoved just enough tear into the heavier end of the rig to lift the lighter end. The boys wriggled free. One signed thank you underwater with hands that had practiced because someone at school cared about that. He signed back you're welcome, and the boy grinned into his mask like a hyena with a scholarship. They pumped bodies out for 6 minutes that felt like a stubborn hour. Bakugo's voice was a steady metronome topside. 20 clear. 21. Don't make me start counting you. Count your cranes, Izuku said, and the door finally swung clean on its hinge. He wanted to thank it. He settled for not breaking it more. As they cleared the last classroom, power hiccuped. Lights stuttered, died, came back wrong. Deep under the arcology, something rumbled. Not machinery, not geology, something with old grammar. He tasted it in his teeth. Bone current, a voice. Little maker, it said, inside his marrow. You sing in my house. He didn't answer the voice. Not with words. He stared down into the trench bayou. The building and saw movement, the suggestion of a sentinel uncoiling. Not Leviathan Prime, a piece of it, a tendon with a mind. A scout. It slid from the silt-like night learning to stand. Najire saw his shoulders change. Talk to me, she said, already looping a kid's hand to a line. Something woke, he said. Not for us, for me. Then I hate it, she said, and flashed him a quick, hard G. Rin that asked for the truth and promised to keep it. The sentinel pushed a pressure wave at him, not a strike, a question. He took it, absorbed, and pinged back, polite. The arcology groaned around them like a nervous crowd. Coach, a fisherman's voice cracked over the civic channel, radio bleeding through from a boat too close to the exclusion line. You putting monsters in my water. Izuku couldn't laugh, so he let it warm him. We're sending guides, he said, voice level. They're not monsters. They'll help you get your nets back. And eat them, a second voice argued. My father fished this trench. You're about to replace me with whales. Not whales, May cut in, calm writing static from the surface. More like coral dolphins. Trust me, it sounds less cute once I show you the spectral analysis. May, Saito snapped, we have the fisheries union on a shared line and you're 6 seconds from becoming a lawsuit. Cool, May said, tell them I'll bring muffins. Bring models, Saito said. And don't disrupt the run. Izuku found the taxi dock under a collapsed gantry, where the last group of evacuees bunched around an air pocket the size of a picnic. He gestured up rope. The teacher was still there. Of course, counting heads, insisting she was fine while her lips shook. He pressed his forehead to hers for 1/2 second, a stupid little headbutt that said you did. Good better than any sentence, and kicked off. Time for help that wasn't human. He opened both hands and let Reef Singer pearls roll into the black. They weren't eggs so much as invitations. They unfurled like umbrellas underwater. Skin spangled with little bioluminescent freckles. Their bodies arced sleek and warm. Their voices came online with a chord that made his ears feel clean. Hey, he told them, quiet through the choir. There's a broken place that needs your work. Schools to move, ruins to reinforce, algae blooms to eat. If you want it. They pulsed back a note he recognized from Every Good Day, we'll try. He sent them a map in pressure gleams and let them decide their own patrols. The first Reef Singers slid along the arcology's spine, clicking tiny hammers with their beaks to set fallen rebar right. Others zipped toward a half-collapsed hydroponic garden and started blowing bubble scaffolds the plants could grab. 2 peeled toward the trench edge and sang an open to AP. Reassure door that the manual insisted was dead. It twitched and obeyed. Inside, a family coughed and laughed and pointed at glowing fish like a miracle arrived with manners. Union line says no, Saito reported. Voice thin with the taste of salt wind and stress. They're worried about anchor stock for next year. Izuku nodded in the dark where she couldn't see him. Then we talk to them and to the singers. You can talk to fish. A fisherman demanded. I can talk to neighbors, Izuku said. They happen to be born underwater. Neighbors don't eat your job, the man shot back. Then we ask them to prefer different food. Izuku said. Not a command, a request. Najire snagged his elbow, held on until his eyes found hers in the murk. She didn't have to say be careful. He heard it in the way she squeezed. The sentinel moved. It wasn't a lunge, it was a suggestion that became force. The trench pressure spiked. Not enough to crush, enough to instruct. Izuku's ears rang with a word that wasn't a word, belong. He turned and let the choir load his throat. He sang an answer, not defiance, terms. Alive chooses. It shivered through hull and bone. The sentinel pivoted, old as shipwrecks and as patient. It poured a whisper across him. Origin rights. Living rewrites, Izuku said, bubbles tearing from his mouth like punctuation. Najire angled herself between him and the Sentine. As if body language meant anything to an ancient tendon. "Back off," she said to the dark, voice spitefully bright. "He's busy." The sentinel answered by flexing the trench floor. Silt billowed. A cold current ripped toward the arcology's starboard pylons. Izuku kicked into it and shoved a pulse sideways. The current wavered, sulked, went somewhere else. Reef singers formed a line and started yodeling. Not pretty. Very effective. Redirecting the flow around a group of divers hauling a collapsible gurney. "Told you they're good," Izuku breathed. On the surface, Reina Wolf's voice slid in cool. "2 micro-cherubim just entered the trench." "Not mine," Bakugo snarled. "Of course the bucket of math sent knives." "Eyes up," Reina said. "Knives that learn." Izuku felt the cherubim before he saw them. Cold blades through warm water, neutral buoyancy dressed like arrogance. They moved toward the bright spots that were reef singers as if they'd been born hungry for glow. He rolled into their path and offered the first a palm. It flowed around him like physics and aimed for a singer's gills. "No," he said, and slammed a short, hard hum into its sensor stack. The drone stuttered, re-leveled, pretended it meant to do that. The second went low, jaw unfolding like a moonflower full of bad ideas. Najire slammed into its shoulder first and shoved it into a rebar nest where it scraped and read to act dignified about getting wedged. "Reina," Izuku asked, barely moving his jaw. "Jam it blind for 4 seconds, she said, all clean math. I'll steal its nose." He dropped a stuttering chord into the water. The drone's head twitch went loose. Reina whistled something dirty in machine and the drone spun a little circle and froze. "2 more," Bakugo said, teeth in the word. "They're learning. I hate them." Saito's tone went from court to command. "All non-essential boats clear. If you are not saving a life, your life is now to leave." The sentinel drifted closer, curious, if a continental shelf could be curious. It lifted a shape from the floor. Not bone, not metal, something old between. It set the shape in the water like a chess piece. Izuku's skin crawled. He sent a pulse and it came back at him with the structure of a skull and the flexibility of a jellyfish. "Okay," he muttered. "That's new." Sable's voice slid in, delighted and horrified in equal measures. "It's a memory organ." He breathed from a lab that definitely wasn't topside and offended Saito even from far away. "It records pressures and plays them back. Leviathan's tape recorder." "Stop smiling," May snapped. "I can't," Sable said. "It's evolutionary art." "Focus," Izuku said, tight, as the memory organ exhaled a compression pattern that sang submit in lowercase and didn't ask please. Reef singers around him wobbled, confused. He had a move. He didn't love it. He sang to the singers, not a command, a menu. He painted 3 food songs in the water. Toxic algae, jelly bloom, microplastic swarms. He painted anchovy spawn as no thank you with a line of respect tied to it. He didn't write it into their bones, he hung it where tastes live. He asked. The singers steadied and pulsed a messy little chord like kids answering roll call. "We like the green. We like the jelly. We like the weird sparkly bits." One pinged, tentative, "Anchovy babies. Leave them," he said. "They're a future." The S. Inger trilled a sad little okay and turned to chase a curtain of algae like a toddler after dandelion fluff. Above, a fisherman coughed into the radio like he didn't want to unclench his jaw. "If they leave the spawn," he said. Hell, I'll bring Bred." "Saito, write it down." "I already did," Saito said, and there was the ghost of a smile in it like she'd accidentally swallowed one. The sentinel rocked the water again, irritated. Izuku stepped forward and let the choir load. "We choose," he sang into its face, if it had a face. From the dark under its shadow, something spoke in a different key, lower, older. Annoyed that it had to use math to be heard. A consonant rolled through the trench like a whale coughing up a cathedral. "Author comes. Leviathan Prime," Najire whispered. "Not yet," Izuku said, throat burned. "A hand. The rest is on the way." Cool, she said, which meant I hate it and I'm here." The arcology creaked and settled as reef singers propped what needed. Propping and unfroze what needed moving. Divers found the last trapped family and started moving them, hands on shoulders, feet on good tiles. Above, cranes eased a collapsed skybridge into something that resembled safety. And a grandmother in a yellow coat slapped a reporter's mic for getting in her way. The cherubim drones adapted. The third came in tall and tried to ignore Izuku's hum. He drove PPED into heliospike just long enough to flash a sun pin into its camera, blinding it into humility. The fourth split a little torpedo that sniffed for bioluminescence like a tick. A reef singer saw it, sneered if fish can sneer, and popped the torpedo with a bubble net. The torpedo decided to be two smaller torpedoes and then decided to be regret as Reina's controller caught both with a digital backhand. Emotion isn't latency, Reina said into his ear calm as a surgeon. It's heuristics. Told you, he said, and tried to keep the grin out of his voice. The sentinel slid away, not beaten. Just uninterested in a long conversation with a mammal in a hurry. As it went, it wrote a last line into his bones, the author will revise you. Let him bring an editor, Izuku said, because snark is oxygen if you use it right. They hauled the last evac up the rope. The kids hit sunlight and screamed not because they were scared but because screaming in sunlight is legal. The teacher came last. She put a hand on his cheek as she passed and then pretended she hadn't, because dignity is also oxygen. Izuku took 1 second. And put his forehead to the arcology's wall. You did good, he told the building. Then he kicked off and followed the rope into sky. He broke surface to a crowd that wanted a hero and got a wet man blinking salt. He didn't raise his fist. He waved like a neighbor who fixed a fence and needs someone to hold a post. Saito hurled a towel at his face with the accuracy of policy. Fisheries Union wants language, she said, breathless and snappish and grateful. Reef singers to prefer algae and jellies. Anchovy spawn protected corridors. Transparent sonar logs. Civil veto if the patterns drift. Yes, he said. They pick. We listen. May shoved a tablet into his hands. 2 cherubim got away with mid-res footage. They'll try to synthesize a counter-choir. I hate them and I already wrote a loophole. Show me, he said. She grinned like a thief in a hardware store. I will if you eat soup. Bakugo shook seawater out of his hair like a Labrador with rage issues. I counted 38 rescues. Nobody died. The drones left insulted. The fish didn't steal lunch. I will allow noodles. Bread first, a voice called. The fisherman stepped forward holding a loaf in a bag like the sun in plastic. Promised as promised. Izuku took it like a medal. ND tore off the heel and handed it to the nearest kid. The kid bit it like a pirate and squeaked when it was hot. The crowd laughed and then clapped and then didn't do either because clapping isn't always how you say we didn't drown today. Reina stood with her helmet off, hair flat to her skull, eyes sharp. Those drones weren't maximal, she said under the noise. Someone upstairs is testing the water before they jump in. Then we teach them bad temperature math, he said, and watched a reef singer surface and spit a perfect ring that caught a plastic bag and folded it like origami. The CR. Out cheered for that because you have to pick something to cheer for. The fear grows teeth. Sable appeared like a rumor with coffee. He offered one to May and didn't flinch when she took it and sipped like a dragon. Your echo menu worked, he said. Elegant. Hated how much I liked it. Then steal it and make it better, she said. Bring muffins with the paper. Sable's smile reached his eyes for a second. Consent option baked in. I promise. Saito eyed him like a hawk spots a snake and lets it live because the field has mice. We're scheduling a fisheries roundtable tonight, she said. Bring your maps. Bring your fish that can draw. Reef singers can do bubbles in shapes, May said. I can teach them a pie chart. God, Bakugo said. Kill me. Response ladder needs a submarine clause, Saito added. Wolf, you're in on that draft. Already writing, Reina said. And I want authority to swat anything with a halo that comes within 4 clicks of our lights. Say, please, Saito said dryly. Reina's mouth twitched. Please. Izuku wrung out his sleeves and listened past the human noise to the other song. Deeper, farther, patient. The sentinel's last ripple still ummed under the bay like a purr from something with too many ribs. The words author comes didn't leave his head. He pictured something the size of a city looking down at a man who throws seeds in the dark and pretending it had already decided the ending. Najire bumped his hip with hers. You're doing that face, she said. The bad math gets a seat at the table face. I am. He handed her the bread. Hold this. I have to tell the Reef Singers thank you before the press conference turns into a race to say the wrong thing first. She bit the bread and talked around it. You know they'll follow you down there when the big one shows. Quote, I know, he said. I'll ask them not to die. She swallowed hard, nodded once, and then smiled because she could do both. He walked to the key, knelt, and whistled a low chord from somewhere below vocabulary. 2 Reef Singers surfaced, blinking freckles. He put his hands out like you do to a skittish dog and said, you picked the green. Thank you. Ey pulsed a pleased burble and head-butted his palm and then dove, drawing a glowing line in the water that spelled nothing and meant okay. Cameras lifted. Saito took the podium because she comes fro. A long line of people who look natural behind podiums. She said the right things in the right order and put the hard parts in the middle where people listen best. Izuku stood behind her and looked like a guy who lifted heavy things when they fell wrong. That's the job. On the bank, a kid with a toy submarine made the toy dive. It bumped his shoe. He nudged it back into the shallows and realized the toy had a tiny camera lens freshly glued on that shouldn't be there. May, he murmured without moving his mouth. Got it, she said, already scrambling the thing into nonsense and replacing video feed with a loop of a cat glowering at an orange. The kid giggled when the cat swiped, and the adult who'd planted the camera pretended he had somewhere else to be. The press conference ended, without anyone declaring war on the ocean, which counted as a win. People drifted. Bread got passed around until it became crumbs and memory. The fishermen stayed long enough to make eye contact and nod like men who might yell tomorrow but not tonight. Reina tilted her chin skyward. You hear that? He did. Not sound. A pressure architecture. Orbital traffic changing pattern like something new was being tugged into place. Cherubim frames on a leash behind a mean god with a spreadsheet. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow, she echoed. Aim ready. He headed for the Sanctum van with Mei and Bakugo. Smelling wet rope and diesel and tea. His legs finally registered a complaint. He ignored them kindly. He'd earned a complaint. He'd earned noodles. He'd earned the right to put his ear to the Earl tonight and listen for what it wanted instead of what anyone, him included, wanted from it. Halfway to the van, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. He didn't. A voice like gravel and moonlight said, Little Maker. He didn't stop walking. You have the wrong number, he said. You have the wrong world, the voice said, and the line died. He looked at the river. The reef. Singers scribbled light with their fins and then erased it with their bellies. A harbor warden bumped a cone onto a piling and made a child cheer. The city decided to keep breathing, loudly again. Leviathan, May asked, watching his face. Or a cousin, he said. Or a prank with excellent taste. Bakugo cracked his neck, casual as a threat. Good. I needed someone bigger to hit. You can't punch a continent, May said. Watch me, he said. Izuku smiled. He didn't want the fight. He would take it. But first, bread, soup. A pearl that needed someone to say goodnight to it without asking for anything. He squeezed the water out of his sleeves one more time and let the base squeeze worry out of him in return. Tomorrow, he told the dark. The dark hummed back. Soon. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Throne of Storms. The sky looked clean until it didn't. A thin scar showed up high over the bay like someone had scratched the world with a nail. May said, that horizon is lying. Izuku didn't answer. His phone hummed with 3 messages at once. Saito, all caps. Bakugo, no punctuation, an unknown number that only sent a single coordinate and a timer. 8:07. The coordinate sat over the river district like a dare. Sirens started thin and then thickened. A public alert scrolled on every glass surface that could glow. Orbital exercise, shelter in place, this is not a drill. People do strange math when a sentence says 2 things that hate each other. Some ran for basements. Some climbed to roofs. Some just stood and held their kids and tried to pick a direction that felt like living. Saito's voice cut across the civic channel, level the way cliffs are. We have an unauthorized railgun platform running a proof of concept pass. Target nomenclature is non-specific. Trajectory O. Verlays include 1 neighborhood and half a marsh. Evacuation is gridlocked. Midoriya, on it, he said, already moving. Do not give anyone a reason to think we're escalating, she said, and it wasn't a plea. It was architecture. Bakugo's feed came hot, lances diverting traffic into the bones of the city. I'll eat the blame later. You, nerd, tell me you can catch a spear from space. If I say yes, do I get bread? Izuku asked. 2 loaves, a fisherman promised on the shared channel, voice already wind-bit. Go. The scar over the bay brightened. No thunder, no roar, just a shape of wrong light. Izuku breathed once and let Heliospike Colossus bloom under his skin. The world got edges. Sun poured into him like he was a roof in summer. He let it pool without flaring, the way you cup water for a friend. Nejire streaked past his shoulder, goggles down, grin fierce. Want me high or low? High for the first pass, he said. Look for anything pretending to aim. Mei jogged beside him, one hand on his elbow the way she does when she's making sure he's here and not just the idea of him. I can give you a clean feed into the power grid for 2 minutes, she said. After that, E-City will complain and the lawyers will scream. 2 minutes is a lifetime, he said. Then spend it like it matters, she said, shoving a telemetry puck against his chest with more tenderness than force. And, hey, she touched his jaw, brief, the kind of touch that tells your heart to look up. Aim first, show off later, isn't it the same thing? He tried, weak. She didn't smile. Not today. He turned toward the river. The scar thickened. You could feel it on your back teeth if you paid attention. Machinery humming a long way away, gravity remembering how to misbehave. The first slew. G wrote itself across the air as a line people would remember in sleep. It wasn't glowing. It didn't need to. It fell with the confidence of bad decisions funded at scale. He moved. No roar. No hero pose. He climbed into heat and let the heliospike spines angle just so. Not a blast. A flare plane. A sheet of hot, bright air he set where the slug would intersect the world. The slug hit the plane A.N.D. threw off vapor like a dragon exhaling wrong. It didn't vaporize. Nothing that heavy does. But it bled speed. Enough to turn a kill into a wound. Again, Bakugo snapped. You've got 3 more in a stagger. Platform's not playing fair. Quote, storm kites, Mei said into his ear, already typing at the speed of bad news. You'll need them high to chew the hail. He opened a pouch that wasn't there and palmed the seeds into the blue. Storm kites unfolded with a soft crackle. Long, skeletal frames with membranes like cloud skin and spines that hummed barely on the right side of music. They caught altitude fast, noses to wind. Tails flicking to draw lines where there hadn't been lines. He pinched 2 fingers together and they understood. Net here, give me lanes. The second slug broke. The sound barrier without bothering to apologize. The kites flexed, membranes tightening until they rang. They didn't grab the slug. They touched it 1,000 times with small betrayals. Drag here, shear there. A microllop of pressure that unstitched perfect into manageable. The slug hit the bay wrong. Gouged water, through a wall that the harbor wardens leaned into with their backs like linemen who'd trained for exactly this. On the Civic Channel, Saito kept her voice steady as she bled the grid into hospitals. Nejire, South Roofs, Mr. Midoriya, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Ms. Hatsume, the transit authority says if you break their capacitors again they will break you. They can try, Mei said sweetly, feeding Izuku another arc of borrowed sun. The third slug came in clever, angled low for collateral. Izuku rolled into it and took the hit on the side of his flare plane. It skated, hissing. He pushed a flare into its path like a goalie shoving a puck with his face. The HEA-T washed his chest and burned in all the ways that keep you honest. He didn't scream. He gasped. That's different. Don't be a martyr, Nejire warned, voice too normal for anyone who didn't know her. I can fly but I can't fight gravity for 2. I'm good, he lied, and then he wasn't. The Seraphim engine spoke inside his head without using a speaker. It borrowed Reina's HUD, because that was its style. Borrow a human and declare it efficiency. Emotion is latency. Prove me wrong, organism. He hated that voice. He loved that voice. It made him work cleaner. Watch me, he said, and let the kites shift formation. No grid. No perfect web. Curves. Like he'd told the wardens on the seawall. Curves hold. A cherubim frame cut through the clouds like a hallelujah with knives. Sleek. White. Angelic in the way architecture magazines think hospitals should look, it carried a cannon along one arm that had patents and grudges embedded in it. The pilot in the frame didn't grandstand. She came in smart, gliding into a lane that put her between the fourth fall line and the densest rooftops. Wolf, Bakugo said, suspicion snug in his voice. You here to help or to prove a point with a corpse? Both are boring, Reina said calmly. I'm here to remove variables. Hi, variables, Izuku said. Do you mind not shooting me for 20 seconds? Depends, she said. Are you about to block this one? He looked up. The fourth slug wasn't a rod. It was a bouquet of slimmer darts meant to outrun his flare and his kites and good sense. He flicked into Raijin for a heartbeat and then back, lines mapping themselves in his head. Too many. Too close. He could save the roofs or the river curve where evac buses were trapped. Not both with the power he had left. May, he said, quiet. How much? 45%, she said. You're running hot. If you try to catch all of it, you'll cook your own brainstem. He didn't answer. Najire did. Pick the buses, she said. I'll do roofs. You can't be everywhere, he said. Tell that to my resume, she said, and rose. The darts hit his flare plane and broke into arguments. He leaned the plane and curled it so the worst of the fall pulled toward the bay. The kites took a beating. You could hear the membranes tear like someone ripping a very expensive dress at a charity gala. They didn't complain. They angled into the pain and multiplied it into less. Reina dropped between two roof clusters, cherubim cannon, a line of math he didn't love. She didn't fire at him. She fired past him, short, brutal bursts that shaved the tips off. The worst darts and bent their stupid physics into the water. Collateral managed, not zero. Managed. Thank you, he said. Your platforms are sloppy, she said. And you're bleeding charge like a man who thinks he has another sun in his pocket. He didn't. He had one move left. It wasn't clever. May, he said, very soft. No, she said, already knowing. No self-disarm while you're airborne. You'll fall like a story with the last page torn out. Trust me, he said, and he meant I trust you so loud the word changed shape. She made a sound that was not yes and not no and then did her job because she's who she says she is. Dump path ready. When you cut, I'll bleed your excess into the kite net. It'll fry half of them. I'll forgive you later. Saito, he asked. Civic veto if I get cute. You are not cute, she said. Do it clean. The fifth slug appeared, a final punch from a hand far away that would never have to hold consequences close. It had more brain than the first four. It slalomed through lanes he hadn't set, aimed itself not at buildings or river but at a substation that would take the whole grid down if it sneezed. Mine, Reina said, moving, too slow to stop it. Fast enough to make a scar if she tried. Her algorithms wrote a line of good choices and none of them were good enough. Izuku cut his power. Heliospike went dark. The flare plane died like a candle in a gust. For a breath he was only skin and bone and a man who makes promises incorrectly. Gravity took back everything it had let him borrow. He felt the fall begin. May stole the dump. Her rig screamed. The kite net drank it and went white for a second, a map of lightning drawn on air. The kite snapped into a new shape in one move. No time to line up, no time to argue, just trust as a formation. They threw the last of his heat back up, not at the slug exactly but at the air in front of it, making a bubble of wrong density that the slug hid and hated. It jogged. 2 degrees. 3. Enough. Reina fired once. A sting at exactly the angle Sable had slipped onto a data shard 2 days ago. The slug split like a promise, halves glancing off the substation's housing. One plunged into the bay and bored a neat, angry hole. The other flattened into the marsh, died in mud and grass and 10,000 new, terrified frogs. Izuku fell. Najire was all motion. She caught his wrist, not enough to stop him. Enough to turn the fall into a slide. Air tried to make an example out of both of them. Reina ghosted under, Frame's palms flaring blue, and took a fraction of the drop. Bakugo's lance. Through a line that wrapped Izuku's ankle and insulted Friction until Friction remembered who it worked for. They tumbled to a roof that used to be a supermarket and now served as a community garden. Tender green rose shook but did not die. Izuku landed on his shoulder, rolled, sat up, and laughed once, breathless and stupid and alive. May's voice didn't shake. It vibrated the way skyscrapers vibrate when the wind makes suggestions. Idiot, she said. Yeah, he said, when he could. She arrived 2 seconds later in a blur of boots and goggles and anger she would never blame on fear. She grabbed his face, thumbs hot on his cheeks, and checked his eyes like she was calling roll. Present, he said. She swatted his forehead with the heel of her hand, then leaned in and pressed her forehead to his for one long beat that burned cleaner than any flare. She didn't kiss him. Neither of them needed the camera angle. They needed breath, and they took it together. Don't do that without telling me first, she said into his hair. I did tell you, he said. You told me like a jerk, she said, but her laugh got in the way of mad and turned it into something else. Reina landed 3 meters away. Cherubim frame swaying like a dancer who hides muscle under grace. The HUD over her left eye still burned faint with overlays. She flicked it off with annoyance that didn't pick a target. Your kite's learned a new trick, she said. I'm filing a complaint. With who? He asked. My future self, she said. She'll be better than me. The crowd in the district didn't cheer. Too many windows blown. Too many sirens close. People did the math and came up with still here, and some of them nodded, and a few of them cried behind their hands, and one teenage girl looked at him like she want to throw something and didn't, and he filed that for later because anger also means alive. Seraphim's voice came back, not in his head this time but on every screen it could touch. It stitched together clips, spliced, added a voiceover in carefully neutral timbre. Unauthorized kaiju generated storm devices endanger critical infrastructure. This organism remains a non-consensual force vector. Centralized deterrence prevents catastrophe. May hissed through her teeth. It's cutting us into a demo reel. Let it, Saito said into the channel, dry and surgical. Public is not stupid. We publish the telemetry. We publish the veto votes. We publish the lives saved. We don't let it bait us into an argument on its terms. Bakugo stomped onto the roof and glared at the sky like it owed him parking. Telemetry shows a whole lot of your nonsense aimed at a substation, bucket, he barked at the nearest camera. Try eating honesty and see if it kills you. The camera did not blush. It drifted into a better frame. Midoriya. Sable's voice arrived from exactly 3 meters out of punching range. He had the decency to look scuffed and out of breath, which meant he had either run here or manufactured the impression convincingly. He held a cable in one hand and a shard in the other like a parable. I have a kernel that can blind Seraphim's mid-tier classifiers for 20 seconds at a time. I can put it into Wolf's frame or into your kites. It will make it dumb in exactly the places that matter. May scowled. Locks. None you'll catch the first time, Sable said cheerfully. He sobered at Izuku's face. Joking. None. I'm not trying to own your toys. I'm trying to stop the engine from owning the news. What do you want for it? Izuku asked. Later, Sable said. A seat. A say. An argument you can't win without me. Not now. Now you take it because we have a window before it uses the footage to sell kill codes to a committee that thinks compassion is a supply chain. Izuku looked at Reina. She looked back, helmet tucked under her arm, sweat making strict lines softer. 20 seconds of blind, she said. I can do a lot with 20. You'll owe me a muffin, Sable said. Get in line, May muttered. Izuku took the shard, turned it in his hand, and handed it to Reina. Help people now, he said. We bargain later. Reina didn't smile. She did something rarer. She accepted an ally without adding a threat to balance the ledger. Copy, she said, slotted the shard into a port behind her ear, and winced. His code feels smug. It is, May said. Work around it. Saito's crew spilled onto the roof with a portable podium because she understands optics and refuses to let optics be a dirty word. She didn't step up yet. She stood with her jacket off and our hair ruined and asked a grandmother if she needed a chair. The grandmother said no and then sat anyway because she is not an idiot. Grid stable, Bakugo reported. Marsh is a mess. Frogs are suing. Marsh will live, May said. I concede read braces tonight. Dawn drizzle will help. Speaking of, She looked at Izuku sideways. Got another kite batch in you? Barely, he said. Barely is a yes, she said. Say it again. Yes, he said, because sometimes love is a coaching tip in knife weather. He called the last of the storm kites, thin and stubborn. They rose and stitched Hyla. NES that turned stray ash into useful rain. A filament haze formed where the slugs had punched the air wrong. The kites shredded it and folded it into clouds that meant somebody's roof plants wouldn't die. On every screen, Seraphim adjusted. Its overlays tried to draw a box around the kites labeled hazard. People watched the lines and then watched the drizzle and then watched old men hold out the IR hands laughing because the rain felt like rain. The box didn't land. The story landed, and it wasn't Seraphim's. Reina's visor blinked twice. Blind, she said, a note in her voice that wasn't joy so much as room. She fired in 4 short arcs that cut 2 surveillance drones into so much confused plastic and smeared the 3rd sensor map into horoscopes. On the 4th, she didn't fire. She turned her frame's palm out. Bred thrust in a weird angle, and pushed the drone out of a lane where it would have hit a medevac. She swore softly and didn't explain why she'd bothered. Nobody asked. The platform upstairs stopped playing. Its scar thinned. Traffic patterns above the clouds moved like something big had shifted from demo to review. Seraphim's narrative pivoted, quick as a pickpocket. Unregulated ecosystem engineering complicates emergency response, it said, and tried to hang that sentence on Izuku's neck like a sign. Saito stepped onto the portable podium and didn't let it. Emergency response succeeded, she said into every microphone it could steal. Public oversight worked. Civil veto stands. There is no kill switch in this city. There is only the work we do and the rules we write together. If you want to argue that the sun is a hazard, take it up with the dais at dawn. Someone in the crowd snorted. Someone else clapped. A teenager finally threw the thing she'd been holding. But it was just a balled-up flyer and it hit Izuku's chest and stuck there and he peeled it off and read it. Sanctuary meeting tonight. Bring snacks. He looked up at her. She looked back. Shaking, angry, relieved. Don't make us need you, she said. Make us know we could do it if you were busy. He nodded. Deal, he said. Hold me to it. I will, she said, chin up, eyes wet. Najire plopped onto the roof beside him and shoved a bottle of water into his hand. Drink, she ordered. He drank. It tasted like the inside of a hose. It tasted like staying. May crouched and started checking the kites, returns on her tablet. Muttering to herself about mesh tension and idiots in orbit. She kept her shoulder pressed against his thigh like she'd decided his leg was a wall she trusted. He let himself lean into that. Quiet as a secret. Reina took off her helmet. She came over. Not too close, exactly close enough. You dumped your power in midair, she said, flat. I did, he said. You didn't check if I had a line. She said. I knew you'd make one, he said, and watched the words land. Her mouth did that almost smile again. Don't make it a habit, she said. It makes my job boring. You deserve better problems, he said. We all do, she said. She tipped her chin at the sky. Whatever's upstairs won't settle for demos. It will come down here with a briefcase and a choir and call it justice. I'll have a choir of my own, he said. She considered him for a long breath and then flicked her visor back on. Aim ready, she said. I'll be where the worst angle is. Sable drifted near the kites and pretended to study them instead of watching May watch Izuku. If you two are done inventing a new equipment category called feelings, he said, we should get you. Our singer harmonics into the transit tunnels before the dinner rush. May flipped him a wrench without looking. He caught it and laughed like a man who likes being part of something whether he admits it or not. Down in the marsh, frogs started in with their opinion. It sounded like critique. It sounded like applause. The harbor wardens nudged debris toward a pile that a dozen kids attacked with gloved hands in triumph. One kid held up a twisted piece of metal and declared it treasure. Another told him that was dumb. The first agreed, both kept working. Izuku looked at the kites one more time. At the way they'd formed a crooked halo over a city that refuses to pick ease when hard is right. He let Heliospike back in carefully, like a man easing into a bath when he knows the water will sting. It filled him warm. It didn't own him. Saito closed the podium and tucked the mic into a bag like a weapon she wasn't done with. We'll need a statement for the council, she told him, dry again. Now that the adrenaline had gone to do the dishes in the back of her head. Keep it boring. People love boring when the sky stops throwing knives. All right, boring that punches, he said. Good, she said. We've had enough theater for a week. He glanced toward the bay. The tide was doing that thing again where it remembered old habits a second too late. Low, steady thumps ran through the Illings like a heartbeat that had learned words it had never needed before. Author comes, the trench had said. He believed it. Tomorrow, Najire asked, reading his face. Tomorrow, he said. She bumped his shoulder with hers. We'll still be here. He touched May's wrist, and she didn't move away, and he didn't make a speech about it. Bakugo muttered something impolite about frogs. Reina check. Ed the line of the clouds like a mathematician checking an old proof just because it's pretty. Sable emailed himself a muffin recipe with the subject bribery. Saito started walking, because the next meeting won't wait. The city settled the way cities do, noisy on purpose, louder where it hurts so you can find it. Izuku stood in the middle of all that and let the ordinary touch him. Bread smell from a cart. Sirens fading. Replaced by a bus braking too hard. A kid asking his dad if Rain is a hero now. The dad saying yes, maybe, sometimes. Above them, whatever had scratched the sky smoothed its face and pretended it had never been there. Below, something older rolled in its sleep again. Aim ready, he told himself. Stay kind. It sounded like a plan you could live with. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. Eden Gambit. The summit smelled like microphones and nerves. Banners looped the rafters of the International Expo Dome, all clean fonts and hopeful colors. The sanctuary charter sat big on the main screen: consent, telemetry, civil veto, response ladder, 4 lines that had earned bruises. Delegates filled the floor, parents filled the cheap seats. The press perched like crows. Saito kept the opening short. We'll argue every comma, she said, eyes hard. But nobody here argues the goal, a city that breathes. She nodded at Izuku like a baton pass. He stepped to the mic and did not clear his throat. No speech, not today. We keep showing up, he said, simple. That's it. A murmur rolled, half relief, half say more. He didn't. He gestured instead. On cue, 2 harbor wardens RO. Say through the glass-walled canal that cut the floor, kelpbacks glistening. Kids gasped. A carapacer clacked across a Plex bridge, stopped to inspect a parliament of microphones, and then, because DIN ITY is a full-time job, refused to perform. The room warmed. That's when the screens changed. Seraphim engine priority feed, the banner announced without asking permission. A highlight reel cut in. Kites against slugs. Reef singers glittering, sentinels shadow. Then the voiceover. Calm, antiseptic. Unregulated organism creation introduces systemic risk. Centralized deterrence prevents cascade failure. Booing is crude. It also works. The floor got loud. Saito lifted a hand and carved the noise down. We'll publish our logs, she said. They can publish theirs. A woman in a dark suit at the back raised a thin folder. She wore a cord gray and confidence-like armor. Interim Order 14B, she announced. Effective immediately. Observational seizure of all juveniles inside the Kaiju sanctum pending federal safety review. Saito's jaw ticked once. She did not look surprised. She took the folder like it might bite. Who signed this? She asked. Combined Security Committee, the woman said. Cites credible intel regarding cult infiltration and resonance hazard. May whispered, that's our rumor, just with better shoes. Izuku didn't wait for the vote. No fighting inside the sanctum, he told himself. And then told everyone. No fighting inside the sanctum. The room cracked in half. Half stood with him, half stood with the paper, all of them human. Bakugo muttered a holier-than-thou curse and rolled his shoulders. Najire touched his wrist. Breathe, she said, then run. They ran. The sanctum felt like a greenhouse and a church. Warm tanks, curled vines, juvenile W. Ardens nosing like dogs that would never grow out of kindness. The pearl recovered from Riverside sat in a cradle of light and low song. It pulsed slow, unhurried, listening. Aegis teams hit the main. Doors with non-lethal written in their shoulders and a nervousness that could start a war. Saito strode in front of them and planted herself in the threshold like a drawbridge that had opinions. No live rounds, she said. No drones. Body cams on. If you step on a leaf, you apologize to the leaf. Chairwoman, the seizure officer said, tone tricky. Step aside. I will walk this order, Saito said. Not to bless it, to keep anyone from dying of language. Bakugo's lances fanned on a balcony, gauntlets low, not aimed. Reina's cherubim frame crouched on a roof opposite, visor dark. Contractor, not cop, and you could feel the difference in how still she stood. Mei traced power lines across the ceiling with one finger, lips moving as if translating humming into math. Izuku put himself between the line of blue and the juveniles. No glow, no size, just a man who had made promises. They'll walk with you, he told the wardens and carapacers. If you want. If you don't, we go. A tiny warden bumped his calf. We go. Copy, he said. The seizure officer raised her bullhorn. All emergent forms will be relocated for observation. Noncompliance is a civil violation. Personhood, Izuku said. Civil veto. We agreed on rules with teeth. Use those. Not this. Your veto doesn't cover active threats, the officer said. We have evidence of a resonance event within the next hour. What evidence? Saito asked. Clipped. From whom? The officer flicked her eyes up like a prayer. Aerospace intel. Seraphim. Between the words. Between always hid knives. The first smoke popped in the far corridor. White. Sweet sick. Wrong. Cold Sun had a second pearl after all. Not in the sanctum. Close enough. Bomb chemistry laced to a Genesis matrix, designed to make resonance if it couldn't find one. Mei swore in a language with 3 vowels and no patience. They're trying to make your kids sing themselves apart, she snapped. We need the brood out. The officer took a step. Izuku lifted a palm. He didn't grow. The room shifted anyway because authority doesn't live in skeletons. Nobody raises a gun in here, he said, almost gentle. You want custody. Walk with me while I evacuate them. Observe. Record. Use the rules you helped write. Bakugo said into the city wide. Lances, open east floodgates. Lane clearance. No heavy rollovers near the sanctum wall. If you clip a war den with a bumper, I'll retire your car with a hammer. Saito's chin tipped a micron. Proceed, she told the seizure officer, making proceed do the work of don't you dare. Evac became choreography. Wardens nudged cones. Carapacers scuttled in pairs. A clutch of sky sentinels slipped in through the upper vents with the humility of saints and the elbows of big birds. Volunteers made a human corridor and cried without stopping work. Najire narrating to the scared on the public channel. It's a field trip. We packed snacks. The fish don't get your snacks. I do. A drumbeat thudded under the floor, resonance building. The pearl in its cradle tightened its pulse in opinionated alarm. Talk to it, Mei said. Izuku leaned over the cradle. Hey, he whispered. No rush. Bad neighbors want a reaction. We don't give it to them. You can stay small till you're ready. The pearl eased a hair, like a clenched fist considering its options. Somewhere under the city, a microquake kissed old pipes. Somewhere above it, a voice rehearsed the word contagion. Then the blast hit. Not here. The expo dome. Windows tilted light like a plate. Screams rippled along the canal. Saito went white around the mouth. Secondary, she said. Already running, already dialing. Bomb in a camera battery. Casualties. Unknown. Reinforce the med corridor, now. Go, Izuku told her. Saito's eyes flashed anger. At him, at the order. At the world that put it in his mouth. She nodded once and vanished, heels wrapping policy into the floor. The resonance in the sanctum spiked. The juveniles flinched. Sky sentinels shuddered, then held, choosing to be anchors instead of antennae. The seizure officer's bullhorn trembled in her hand. This proves the risk, she shouted over the hum. We impound now or you make it worse, Mei snapped. Hands flying across a mobile rig she'd built out of 3 pucks in spite. We need a ground, either a river lung or an Eden Queen. Izuku's stomach dropped. Eden Queen. Single, vast, terraformer. The kind of species you use once because the world is bleeding out and you'd like it to stop. He hadn't seeded one because thrones are tempting. Queens make thrones. Thrones make tyrants if you're sloppy. The sanctum shook again. The pearl answered someone else's call, scared. Options. Bakugo barked. Seed the queen, Mei said, raw. But do it in the open, and do it with consent. And do it where she can stabilize the climate cell that's trying to tear the coast in half next week. Next week, Najire repeated, eyes wide. Heat dome meets cyclone. We've been watching that model. The seizure officer stared at Izuku. You cannot unleash an untested. Unleash. Mei spat. You don't unleash neighbors. You introduce them and bring snacks. Non-lethal rounds only. Izuku told the Aegis line because some words need repeating. Then, to the brood, friends. We're leaving. If you want. Every single juvenile he could see bumped him or blinked or chirped a yes. Even the carapacer who liked to stare at his reflection like a salaryman at a bar mirror. Choice doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. They moved. The river took them like family. Harbor wardens bracketed the flotilla, sky sentinels cutting the air above, carapacers clinging to gunnels like barnacles with diplomas. The city poured onto bridges and balconies. Phones filmed. People shouted offers that were all the same. What do you need? Room, Izuku said, passing beneath. And a little faith. At the bay's mouth, the air flexed wrong. The forecast had been lying politely all week. Now it ripped the mask off. Bands of heat twisted out over the water like ropes. The cyclone seedline sat offshore, flexing. Queen goes there, Mei said, pointing with her whole arm at a broad shelf beyond the breakwater. If she accepts. If she doesn't, we abort, and I cry later. Izuku opened his hand. One seed pearl, bigger than his palm, warm like a sleeping cheek. He could feel the plural in it. You don't make a queen. You invite one. Hey, he said to the pearl. Our sky is sick. If you want, you can be the kind of center that breathes with it instead of on top of it. No crown. No command. A job. With neighbors who can veto you. Deal. The pearl pulsed once. Twice. Okay. He let it drop into the sea. It opened like a sunrise that decided to be patient. Veins spun. Fronds unfurled. The water fizzed with chemistry that tasted like soil, somehow. The Eden Queen expanded until she took a shape you could love with both hands, a slow, living reef that bent heat into wind and wind into rain and asked permission of the tide with every move. You just made yourself a target the size of a district, Bakugo said, voice half pride, half I'm here if it goes bad. Add me to the list, Izuku said. The list did not wait. Figures on the far breakwater moved wrong. Cold sun, hair tucked under caps, masks simple, eyes fever sharp. One held a bag like a sympathy card. In the bag, the second pearl bomb. Cracking. On me, Izuku said, but they were already moving. Bakugo leapt a gap big enough to embarrass a physics teacher and hit the first cultist like a punctuation mark. Najire flowed through the second, a bright curve that ended in a wrist lock and an apology. The third pulled the bag strap high, triumphant, and learned trying is different from doing when. Reina's frame put a palm between the bag and the world and pushed gently. The strap snapped. The bag arced out over the queen, fell short, and bloomed like a bad idea. The water screamed, not with heat or force, with pattern. The resonance wave reached for the juveniles, for the queen, for the sanctum echoing downriver. The world tried to be a tuning fork with bad manners. Sable's voice cut into Izuku's ear, stripped of irony. I have a grid, he said. Black lab net. It's ugly. It'll eat the spike for 60 seconds if you feed me your choir as a carrier. Locks. Mei snapped. None, Sable said. Not because I'm an angel. Because it's faster. Do it, Izuku said, already dropping into the abyssal choir. He sang low. Wide, here, not there, now, not forever, and Sable's net ate the words. Tea of the resonance like a tar pit eating a bad statue. Reina rolled her frame, screen bright, jaw tight, shards of borrowed code chewing at seraphim classifiers before they could turn the whole scene into an indictment. Bakugo swore, joyful and furious, and rammed his flagship, the new one, the one he loved, sideways into the outer channel to make a breakwater. It groaned, screamed metal, and held. He held with it, one gauntlet buried to the elbow in the hull, blood happy to be useful. Flagship's done, he panted. Buy me a beer not named, lawsuit. I'll buy the whole bar, Izuku said. The blast guttered. The queen steadied, fronds flexing, heat lines combing into rainbands that skated the bay and dimpled rooftops like drum practice. People on the sea wall whooped. Relief, anger, reverence mixed to a sound city's no. Cold Sun tried to run and learned that running in wet boots is a moral failure. A grandmother tripped one with a cane and then scolded him like a grandson. Najire cuffed him gently. Community service for 10,000 hours, she suggested. Starting with aquariums and humility. Saito arrived out of breath, hair and jacket giving up on pretending not to care. She took in the boat in the channel. The queen growing green, the cultists face down, the cameras everywhere. Her eyes landed on Izuku last. This order is revoked, she said, chucking the seizure pap. Into a bin with a flick that would have ruined a lesser manicure. Publicly. Right now. Too late for that, the seizure officer murmured, pale, watching the queen's slow flare. We'll never get that genie back in the... They're neighbors, Saito bit out. Not genies. Call them correctly or go home. Seraphim, shut out of the frame it wanted, pivoted to optics. Its feed split screens, summit bomb, hull in the channel. Slow green sprawl, and scrolled a caption meant to burrow, unilateral climate intervention. Who governs the gods? Everyone, Izuku said to no one and everybody. We govern each other. He looked to the queen. You good? He asked, because you ask even when it's silly. She pulsed a ripple like a nod and threw a hand of drizzle across a district that hadn't smelled rain in months. Then the bay peeled open. Not metaphoric, real. The water lifted away from itself in a pediatrician's gentle scoop. A drop blotched the sky like ink in a glass of milk and then extended. The air got heavier and tasted of old copper. The harbor lights dimmed in the specific way things do when reality bends and stays bent. People didn't scream first. They stilled. Screaming came after. The first thing everyone saw was a rib. A white curve the thickness of a commuter line, surfacing like a shoreline trying out a new route. It rolled, and the roll carried a shadow under it so comprehensive it made the Eden Queen look modest. Leviathan Prime did not arrive. That's a human verb. Leviathan Prime resumed. Pressure spiked and didn't let go. The choir in Izuku's chest resonated even without his permission. Bone current flooded his ears with grammar. Little maker, the voice said, which is not a sound so much as the memory of being a plankton that learned a pronoun. You seed in my water. We'll share, Izuku said, standing on a cracked bollard like that could make him tall enough. We'll vote. We'll say no to each other. That's the deal. Author rights, the voice said. Living rights, he said. Together. Seraphim took its shot, because of course it did. A cherubim strike package knifed from cloud, each drone carrying intent cut to look like policy. Reyna spun her frame, visor flaring, pilot eyes hard. Engines overlays whispering deterrence. She could have fired a line that let Seraphim claim she was on brand and still save the day. She did not. She flew body first into the lead drone, put her shoulder through its jaw, and shoved it away from the queen, away from the crowd, into open water where it arced until it learned humility. Civil veto engaged, sigh. To snapped into every feed like a judge and a bell. This city vetoes killing buttons. We veto God-sized edicts. We veto every sentence that replaces neighbors with numbers. Put it in the minutes. Bakugo, bleeding and grinning wild, slammed open his gauntlet. Sanctum evac complete, he coughed. Charter stands. Punches ready. Mei's hands shook as she slotted a new puck into Izuku's palm. Don't you go big yet, she warned. You're not ready to wear 3 forms at once without cooking your head. We hold. We aim. He almost quipped. Then he didn't. He put his palm to the dock and let the verdant Goliath up one arm. The shard scale along his spine, the heliospike light tucked in his ribs, a stack, not the crown. Power is tools in a belt, not a throne on a skull. Neighbors, he said, raising his voice not to shout, just to be heard over a rib that rode itself into the weather. We keep the lane open. We do not panic. We offer the queen our veto if she overreaches. We soak the docks. We move the elderly first. We aim kindness like artillery. A fisherman with sun lines cut into his face lifted the last heel of yesterday's bread to his forehead like a salute. We're with you, he said. We were always with you. Don't make me regret it. I won't, Izuku said, and believed himself enough to stand on. Leviathan Prime turned its attention the way storms do, all at once. The chair under Izuku's feet became profoundly elsewhere and then came back. The voice inside his bones spoke with a smaller voice nested in it, the sentinel he'd argued with, pouting like a child aloud at the adult table. Author revises. Revise this, Bakugo yelled, and threw a carbon spike into the rib that struck sparks like an argument biting its tongue. It didn't hurt Leviathan. It marked it. We are here. Seraphim rerouted, hungry for the theater of a catastrophe. Its copy glitched as Reina fed Sable's blind kernel into the right place at the right time. For 20 seconds, the city was its own narrator. That was enough for people to hear their own voices over the machine. Izuku stepped off the bollard and into the lane they'd cleared, eyes on the queen, eyes on the rib, eyes on Reina's frame flicking between angles like a musician between songs. He reached for the choir, not to shout, but to invite. We meet, he sang, low. We argue. We don't eat each other's futures. Sit. The pressure changed. Not down. Out. The rib sank a span. The bay exhaled like a chest unclenching for one bright moment. The Eden Queen flared a ring of cool rain that spattered like applause. No foreshadow. No slow drum. The next moment was active and stupid and human. A kid dropped her backpack. It rolled into the water. She reached, slipped, fell. And a harbor warden was there, shouldering her up. Rain barrel bonking the dock like a metronome keeping time for calm. The crowd didn't cheer. They worked. Hands, towels, space. The city learned a posture and held it. Izuku looked up into a sky with a rib in it and a contractor holding a failing halo off with her shoulder and a politician writing veto into law with an angry voice and a rival bleeding into a hull he loved, and he didn't feel like a god or a savior. He felt like a neighbor with momentum. Aim ready, he said quietly, and the word rippled down the key. People shifted. The kites regrouped. Reef singers drew bubble sigils that meant stay and talk. The cherubim orbit flickered, recalculating what story it could still sell. He pointed at the rib. With me, he told the city, the queen, the wardens, the woman in the visor, the man with the bruised ship. The chair who had chosen to stand in front of her own order. He stepped forward, not changing shape so much as inviting all his shapes to line up behind the word with. The bay answered. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Tide Compact. The bay answered, and the answer had weight. Spray blew sideways. The Eden Queen breathed rain in little silver hands. A rib the size of a muter line rolled under clouds and turned the light to chalk. People didn't scream first. They planted their feet. That's what a city does when it decides to keep existing. Izuku stepped into the cleared lane between dock and water. He didn't go giant. He didn't glow. He kept his voice steady and let the abyssal choir sit warm behind his ribs like a coiled note. Neighbors, he said to the crowd, to the queen, to the rib. To Reina in her frame and Bakugo bleeding into a hull he liked too much and Saito with a phone in one hand and a law in the other. We keep the lane open. We don't panic. We vote loud. Pressure bent. The Leviathan's attention isn't a look, it's a weather event. The bay dropped a foot and didn't bother to rise on schedule. The voice came the way thunder does when it learns grammar. Little maker, you seed in my water. We share, Izuku said, and walked until the waves lapped his shins. We argue. We say no to each other. That's the deal. Up high, the sky stitch ed itself into a halo, sleek white ribs unfurling, a curtain of shimmering lines descending. Seraphim halo curtain. Containment flashed in discrete topography across 100 drone feeds like manners with teeth. Saito didn't wait for analysis. Civil veto. She snapped into every open channel. Motion on the floor. Deny deployment. Roll call. A fisherman lifted his battered cap. An ICU nurse on a ferry deck. A janitor on a rooftop with a broom like a pike. The city found its voice. Saito held the mic like a gavel. Veto carries, she said. Stand down, Halo. Seraphi. Tried something petty. Rerouted overlays, threw disclaimers, flashed a fake consent screen like a trick email. Reina's frame flared, visor bright. She twisted 2 toggles and tore a slim module from beneath her seat, wires coughing blue. No, she told the HUD like it was a student copying the wrong answer. You don't get my hands today. Her cherubim cannon tracked away from the water, away from the queen. Toward the descending curtain. She didn't fire. She body-checked one node out of alignment and the curtain tore with a little gasp you only hear if you love machines. Wolf, Bakugo said, sounding like he hated praising anyone. Nice shoulder. Write it down, she said, eyes never leaving the arc. On the far breakwater, the last cold sun kids made their play. 3 black cases act open like cheap magic tricks and sang an ugly chord that tried to convince the queen to be a bomb. Najire dropped from a light pole, hands soft and mean, and folded 2 wrists into regret. The third ran. Rainbarrel left the water like a vault horse with opinions, bonked the kid's knees, and planted the bright cone in front of his shoes like a judge's gavel. The kid tripped, coughed, and sobbed into the cone. May jogged over, breath shallow, goggles fogged. Community service, she said, snapping a strip tie one-handed. 10,000 hours of cleaning microplastics. We take muffins as penance. The bay's pressure spiked again. Not an attack, a posture. Author writes, the voice said, rolling through bones and pilings in the cavities of fish. Living writes, Izuku answered. He didn't shout. He matched the note and refused to budge. The Leviathan brought up helpers, scripters, pale-knuckled things like jointed scrolls. They uncoiled near the rib and started recording the queen's pulse and the city's breath as if it had a right to copy without asking. Reef singers surfaced, freckles bright, and blue nets of bubbles across the scripter faces. The bubbles carried little glyphs that spelled ask in an alphabet nobody had on paper yet. Kids on the seawall saw it and started banging on the railing with bottles and spoons, keeping time like gremlins with rhythm. Sound matters. Sound draws lines. May, Izuku said quietly. On it. She dumped 3 pucks into his hand. Tether. Spread load. No thrones today. He stacked low. Verdant threw his legs into the soaked wood. Shard scale up his spine like a polite mirror coat, a pocket of heliospike kept small and hot under his sternum. A belt, not a crown. He lifted both palms and sang. Not a command, not a sermon. Terms. Spawn corridors for anchovy. No pressure spikes within the queen's green when children are in the water. Weather quotas. Share the sky. Meeting protocol. Solstice, equinox, noon. Veto on both sides. No kill codes. Ever. The queen punctuated each line with rain. Reef singers complied with exclamation point burbles. Carapacers lined the dock seams, mandibles clicking a counterpoint like hardworking printers. Harbor wardens formed a quiet crescent, backing the lane with their big patient backs. Make it visible, Saito said, already tapping into the municipal signage feed. Every board along the waterfront, bus shelters, ferry boards. A noodle joint's chalk screen, blinked and displayed Izuku's terms in language, then in icons, then in simple drawings a kid could recognize, fish trails drawn in blue. A big green circle around a school of stick figure swimmers, a shared sun, a meeting table, 2 hands on one red button with a big line through it. Seraphim pivoted, tried to paste. Unilateral climate intervention, unsafe. The city ignored the caption and read the pictures. The Leviathan scripter leaned down to Izuku's hands like a dog sniffing for contraband. He held still. It tasted his pulse, his steady, his stubborn. The rib hummed a note that wasn't approval but wasn't dismissal either. Author revises, the big voice said, less sure of its own period. A scatter of white lights ifed out of the clouds, cherubim darts on the far side of Reina's reach. Left flank, she warned. They'll try to tear the queen's crown. Storm kites, May snapped. Izuku opened his fingers. The last batch leapt dirty and perfect. They rose into a crooked halo and turned darts into harmless, humming kitestring. On a seawall camera, 2 darts escaped. Sable's voice arrived with the calm of a man installing malware at a charity gala. Colonel Blind. 20 seconds. Eat them. Consent. Izuku asked. Automatic now. Sable exhaled like it hurt. Logged. Reina took the window and shaved both roans apart with 4 clean pulses that made the air smell like burned snow. The Leviathan rolled. The world rolled with it. Old habit. The queen held. The rain cooled. People breathed. The pressure Izuku's head stopped trying to show off. Talk to me, Najire said, floating over the lane, hair plastered to her cheek, eyes bright. He's thinking, Izuku said. Cool, she said. Me too. Across the dock, the teenager who'd thrown the flyer yesterday stepped forward until her sneakers kissed the wet edge. She didn't make a speech. She held up a slice of bread like a coin you pay to cross something old. The fishermen around her did the same. A grandmother with a cane held hers higher than anybody, because that's how she is. It's not magic. It looks like it when the math lands. The Leviathan's voice came down a half key. Less choir loft, more porch. Little maker, you seed, you ask, you sing in my house. We're neighbors, Izuku said. Neighbors vote. We did, Saito said crisply, and read the tally off like a recipe. Bylaws live. Civil veto stands. Sanctuary charter supersedes external kill protocols on municipal waters. Tide compact proposed here, public, with 3,000 D witnesses and a cat who looks unimpressed. May leaned over. There's not a cat. There's always a cat, Saito said. The Leviathan lowered a limb, not a hand, a readable intention. It touched the water in the lane and the water didn't boil or freeze or go modern art. It rippled, gentle, toward the queen. The queen flexed a frond and returned the ripple like a handshake across species and arrogance. Bag the moment, Bakugo muttered into his mic. Before the bucket upstairs rewrites it. Too late for rewriting. People had eyes. Children squealed when the ripples tickled their ankles. Arbor Warden bobbed and bonked and did not pretend not to enjoy itself. Rainbarrel tapped the dock twice like a vote of confidence. Seraphim ran out of story. Its overlay hiccuped, then settled on. Colorado governance trial, monitoring. As if it had suggested this at brunch. Reina laughed, short and ugly. Eat your own minutes, she told the sky. The Leviathan's voice slid into Izuku's bones one last time, not softer, never that. Just present in a way his body accepted. Little maker, author revises with you. Terms sit, signed. Saito asked, because the law wants ink even when the ink is weather. The rib rotated, broke a piece of itself as casual as you crack a baguette. The shard fell into the lane and did not sink. It sat steaming like a brand new law. Reef singers wove a ring around it. Arapacers scuttled up and tapped it twice, marking it with faint mineral lines that would set like signatures. May pointed her tablet and swore quietly in wonder. It's recording the pulse pattern. Fail a term, and it'll bruise. Public copy, Saito said, grabbing two aids with her eyes. We print plaques. We teach it in schools. We bake a cake for it. Bread, the fisherman said, holding his slice high. Bread, Saito corrected, and almost smiled. Cold Sun tried one last ugly thing. Handful of little, shatter psalms, shaped like prayer coins flicked off the breakwater by some idiot with a hero complex. They hit the queen's surface and fizzed. She flexed and burped and the coins spun out onto the sand like beach garbage. A carapacer trotted over, ate one, and wagged a tiny tail it definitely didn't have. Sanitation clause, May said. Draft it. Drafted, Saito said. Effective now. For a heartbeat, the whole city just stood in it. Kids giggled. Grown-ups pretended they weren't crying. Bakugo leaned on a busted piling and breathed like a man who had been very loud and had earned some silence. Reina sat on the dock edge in her frame like a knight who'd discovered public transit, visor up, hair wet. Mouth doing that not smile that means good work. Sable showed up with a bakery box like a raccoon who knows the back door and held it up without comment. Izuku's knees and wobbly in that delayed way bodies do when they've been busy not dying. He sat on a cleat. May crouched in front of him and checked his pupils with thumb and forefinger like she was taking roll. Present, he said. Pulse, she asked. He put her hand on his neck. Yours is faster, he said. Yeah, she said, voice small for once. She leaned forward and put her forehead to his for a long second that burned clear. No cameras needed that. The city didn't either. It had rain. Najire flopped beside them like a koi who learned gymnastics. So, she said, we just negotiated with a continent. Add it to your resume, he said. I put, drinks enough water. First, she said. Saito took a breath, squared herself, and went to the mic that somebody had sensibly set up on 3 milk crates. Minutes reflect, she said, hair ruined. Voice steady. The city of Bay Wards and the being known as Leviathan Prime have entered into a tied compact. Terms read on the boards. Violations will be public. Veto remains civil. The Queen is a neighbor. The city is not a staging ground. We'll publish telemetry tonight. And, if anyone has bread, I've been told it's part of the ceremony. Bred went up like birds. Reina slid her helmet under her arm and drifted over. You dumped power clean, she said to Izuku, businesslike. You also trusted me to cut the curtain. I did, he said. Do it again, she said. But warn me if you plan to be stupid. Define stupid, he said. Surprising me, she said, and almost grinned. Aim ready, he nodded. Aim ready. Bakugo shook a frog out of his gao. NT led and scowled at it until it jumped away offended. Response ladder held, he grunted. We didn't blow the wrong thing up. We wrote boring that punches. I hate how good that feels. You love it, May said. Shut up, he said. Which meant thank you. Sable opened the bakery box. I bribed a guy who hates me into loving me, he reported. Muffins. Blueberry. Consent baked in. May took one, bit it, and narrowed her eyes. You get one seat, she said. In the back row. No monologues. I'll whisper, Sable promised, already failing. Rainbarrel abandoned his cone, fetched another brighter cone from nowhere, and bonked it against the new rib stone like a judge closing court. People laughed. The laugh didn't crack. That matters. The rib eased back underwater, slower than it came. The pressure let go of everybody's teeth. The Queen sank an inch and rose again, steady. Out past the breakwater, the tide drew a new map in pale lines, spawn corridors, no-go pulses, a meeting circle non. Of them could see unless they were humming. The city hummed back. Izuku stood because people were looking, and that's the job. He didn't make a speech. He pointed at the boards with the pictures in. Then at the rib stone and then at the crowd. We keep the lane, he said. We keep veto public. We keep writing together. I'm not your fix. I'm your neighbor. Hold me to that. The teenager from T. He Doc raised her bread slice like a toast. Don't make us need you, she called. Make us know we could do it if you were busy. He saluted with his own slice. Deal. Sirens softened into traffic. Helicopters cleared a little higher. The halo curtain stayed in its box, sulking. Cameras found other angles. Someone started a text thread called Tide Compact Snacks and immediately devolved into arguments about mochi versus muffins. May tugged his sleeve. Noodles, she said. Noodles, he agreed. Najire jogged off to yell gently at the kids to stop feeding bread to carapacers, which only aid the carapacers more determined to be adorable. Bakugo limped to the busted flagship and patted its hull like a horse. Saito took a call and said, no, 5 times in 5 different ways and hung up like a pro. Reina tilted her chin at the sky, decided it didn't get a vote for 10 minutes, and sat down to watch the water like a civilian. Izuku looked at the Queen. We good? He asked. A ripple kissed his shoe. Okay, he said, mostly to himself, mostly to the city. We show up. That's it. He followed May toward steam and stools in the ordinary. The bay breathed in, breathed out. The rib stone ticked once like cooling metal. Rainbarrel stole a third cone and did crimes with it. The reef singers drew a circle in bubbles and popped it with their noses. The storm kites folded themselves, ragged and proud. Aim ready. Stay kind. Chapter 7 End.